sort of angle here, with your feet at a 45-degree angle, and with 5 fingers up on your left and 2 on your right. I'm going to ask that you would repeat after me. Allah, the Father of the universe.
Allah, the Father of the universe.
The Father of love.
Father of love.
Truth. Peace. Freedom. And justice. Allah is my protector.
Allah is my protector.
My guide and my salvation.
My guide and my salvation.
By night and by day.
By night and by day.
Through his holy prophet Drew Ali.
Through his holy prophet Drew Ali.
Ameen.
Ameen.
Thank you.
Islam.
Islam. Islam, and happy Holy Day, Moors, and welcome to House of Reawakening Minds. And tonight we are happy to have back in the house our own National Grand Sheikh, Taj Tarik Bey. Let's receive him.
Thank you. Thank you. You've been good. What we're going to be dealing with tonight is confused about taxes. Now, yeah. Yeah. Now, everything that we do is actually, so you be very clear, we do not follow what you would call a rote or tunnel vision position. We seek truth. Truth is our religion, Islamism. Are we clear? Number 2, everything that we do is dedicated to uplifting fallen humanity, and particularly with our people, to liberate you from the mental servitude that we suffer from, and also from the false representations and misrepresentations that have been constructed to hinder our people, to enslave them, to subjugate them, to distort them, to mislead them, to rape them, and to rob them. And we don't play sacred cow. Are we clear? So if we say things that offend you, it's not intended to offend you. We just deal with truth, and we deal with truth no matter where it comes from. Are we clear? And we seek it for the purpose of uplifting fallen humanity. One of the interesting things is that you discover with our people is that they don't know history and law goes together. For some of you who already know that, that is good. For those of you who don't know that, realize that history and law goes together. Do not approach anything in the social order without researching history and law. Are we clear? If someone's giving you a history lesson and they don't know jurisprudence, that's a handicap. Are we clear? If somebody's talking jurisprudence, which is the science that treats of law and the systems of law, and don't know history, they're handicapped. Are we clear? One of the keys on how they have misled our people is that they've given them snippets of history but never taught them jurisprudence. Are we clear? Made them think that the Bar Association of England is qualified to the law. Are we clear? Which actually was a trick to make you subjugated when you're supposed to be taught history and law together, just like your left leg and your right leg. You know, you don't get into a race with your left leg tied down and think that you're going to win just because you got strong legs, because it usually doesn't work well. And so what we're going to deal with tonight is some of the Inquisition operations in the Western Hemisphere dealing with confused about taxes. And one of the things that I recognize, because of the fact that the corruption at North America is so deep and so widespread, that most of the information that will be received by the people is usually presented to them to keep them busy while they get screwed. Are we clear? So we deal with information that directs you to liberty, directs you to liberation, directs you to allodial thinking. Are we clear? So don't look at necessary for us to play some party line, coming only from the Quran or only from the Bible or only from Uwaspi, or we come from all the books. Are we clear? And all that is good we keep, and all that's distorted we'll expose. Are we clear? And we do not promote followers. We promote liberated people. Are we clear? to come together and to fix things. Are we clear? And we try to assess areas where our people may be limited in exposed information and try to dig that up and share that with them, or try to direct you to certain information that will give you a pretty reasonably solid background to deal with any subject matter in general. Are we clear? In the general course of human events and in the general interchange that we have with people, our people are generally considered incompetent and are treated accordingly. And unfortunately, they've been convinced that the problems that we have is race problems and color problems. That's a cover argument that was created by social engineers, i.e. the Dutch German masters who have been occupying North America under the Spanish Inquisition. Are we clear? Now I'll remind you all, when reading and when studying, don't go past words that you do not understand or comprehend. Are we clear? Write them down and research them later. Are we clear? Because one of the things that the Romans have done to dumb our people down has been to deny our children an etymon degree, which they should get in the 3rd grade. They start in the 2nd, and they should get it solidly in the 3rd grade, knowing that absence of an etymon degree, they would be handicapped for life, meaning that they could pronounce words but could not read. Are we clear? We won't get it totally into that, but understand if you cannot go to the mother, which is the seed, the origin, the true meaning of a word, then someone can present you with contracts or with a conversation and actually be drawing you into a contract, and you may not be aware of it because you think they're saying one thing and they're actually saying another. And I will say this because it is true. That type of interchange between us and persons who are claiming to be government, I say government, claiming to be government, is a fixed pattern and deliberate operative, meaning that operates every day deliberately to steal your birthright. Are we clear? I want you to write this down and deal with this later. Misclassification. So write that down, misclassification. As cheap. Impersonation. Because these are things that you're going to be dealing with every day. All right? Misrepresentations. De facto operations. De facto operations. As a rule of operation, too. That's de facto. So I want you to, because we're not going to go into all of that, I want you to research those words, go into the etymology of those words, read those words, and understand that they're embodied in what we're dealing with tonight. All right? Now, I'm going to deal with a certain section in the book, Confused About Taxes. And while this is not the finalized version, you know, yeah, well, you can understand that. Stop laughing. We will be making sure that all the material is available to you and will be published from the House of Reawakening Minds. All of my materials, are we clear?
Clear.
You will no longer be held hostage. All right? I want to make this clear to those who may not be aware of it. What you know as the IRS today is really a Jesuit order operations of Inquisition revenue services. It is old. It's just given a new name, are we clear? So as a research point of reference for you in your spare time, think Thomas de Torquemada, Inquisitor General for the Popes of Rome. Think also this, Exchequer's Chamber, which is the pit beneath the churches where they put people who did not pay the popes off. Are we clear? And that is called, legally, it's called hell. And you'll find that in your law dictionary. And so our people's concepts of what they've been told in the name of religion, notice that I say that, in the name of religion, much of it is false. Are we clear? Do not get the idea that the Quran or the Bible or WASPI, that they're wrong. They're not necessarily wrong. They have been misrepresented to the people. Are we clear? And I want you to understand this too. All scholars, all priests, all adepts have all of the books. I want you to know that. All scholars, all adepts, all high priests, all imams, all rabbinate, all bishops have all of the books. When they're playing the club game for divisional purposes, because they divide people against each other because that's their monetary income, they will present them one angle from what they're calling a particular religion and keep them divided from the rest of the human family, and they'll do the same thing with the others, so they keep them fighting each other when the truth of the matter is they should have all the books. Are we clear? That's the workings of a dark priesthood. Have nothing to do with spirituality, has nothing to do with the prophets, has everything to do with a totally corrupted platform of dogmata presented to the masses in the name of religion for control purposes and for mental servitude. And then blame the injury that comes to humanity on the mystical devil created by the priesthood. Hard lesson. You may not believe it, it's really how things have been working. And most people will not go there as to what I just said. Two things, because they take people's lives who tell the truth about this stuff. They will slander your character. They will turn on you like a roach type thing. And they will try to misrepresent. However, what we try to do when we present a position to you, we try to give you reference so it becomes your own. All right, so we suggest don't accept what we say, research what we say. Are we clear? And it was considered a lie until you yourself become that truth. Are we clear? This is to let you know the different angles that we may use when we're sharing information. So if you expect us to follow some usual pattern, you're not going to find that here, if you get the point. Because we do not promote human mental suppression. And we do not promote misrepresenting Allah, Jesus, Moses, Muhammad, yet we support all of them. Are we clear? Are we clear? And that's the real truth. So when you hear us come from any of the books, we're not conflicting with the other books, we're complementing them, because we know that's what they actually do. It's just that the priesthood, for selfish reasons, have had the human family divided against each other by making them think that the divine law principles in nature are different from different versions of gods. That BS came from the priesthood, has nothing to do with the prophets whatsoever. So let's get that out the way, all right? Now, confused about taxes. Now, I did this, and this is not the final version. This was actually a second to the final edit, which was printed up, and so it's out there, but this is really not the final version. All right. However, it is useful. useful to you. And you will be receiving the final version for those who want it in the next few weeks, if not months. We ain't going to get out of this year. We're going to fix a lot of this stuff. If you get the point. Fix a lot of this stuff. And for those who may not understand, the Moorish Divine and National Movement is my bride, and I treat it accordingly. That's for those who may not understand where I'm coming from. I want to demonstrate to you some factual information so that you can start liberating yourself and your families. You'll need more information. Are we clear? But this information is fact, proved, true, cross-referenced multiple times. Are we clear? Yeah. All right. Now, we're going to deal with fundamentals to make things clear to you. I want you to be absolutely clear with this fact. Income, what is it? I want you to freely interchange with me on this issue, because this is very important, because this is the root of our conversation for the night. Although we're going to deal with some other issues attributed to it, we're going to deal with this as a root issue so that we can start stopping the economic bleeding, because our people are being sucked on and they don't know how to help themselves. You know, like if people don't know what they're dealing with, they don't know how to approach it. The problem, they know it's a problem, but they don't know how to approach it. You approach problems, if you're dealing with government or anyone who claims to be government, your relationship with them is called a trust relationship. The authority that is used or allegedly used by anyone who claims to be government is delegated by Constitution. Outside of that, it does not exist with them. Are we clear? Anyone who claims to be government or anything that relates to what is called government exists for the sole purpose of securing and protecting the divine and natural birthrights of the beings of the land. Are we clear? Government serves no other purpose. When it bridges that, it is no longer your government, it becomes an enemy. Are we clear? And if it's someone who's in government, they have entered the state of what is called treason and misprision. Are we clear? Be diligent in these things, because these things are happening to you every day. And so I'm going to clear up some things that most of you probably already know, but for the few who may not know, I'm going to clear this up for you. Are we clear? Now, I'm going to go into, confused about taxes, I'm going to go into a section. The unlawful tax alert, but I'm going to go into like page 29, and that's the IRS, so go to page 29. The IRS is not, be clear on this, the IRS, that's the Internal Revenue Service, is not a constitutionally sanctioned part of your United States Republic of America government. Are we clear? It is a military arm of bookkeeping belonging to the Jesuits and Knights of Malta. Are we clear? Name and identity is number one. Name and identify the article and section of the Constitution for the United States of America that established or delegated authority to the IRS Corporation to lay and collect taxes. That's a question. You will not find it because it doesn't exist. But that's a question everyone should ask themselves when someone starts asking you what your income is. And when they ask you what their income is, what they really ask you is the dead corpse that you have been represented by those persons who are asking you. The corpse is registered as a corporation on Chancery on Fleet Street in England for the Popes of Rome under the secret Treaty of Verona. How much has been received in that corpse, in that corporation? They're not talking to you, the living man, but they're declaring you dead. Are we clear? Now, let's make this very clear. Income does not apply to the living man or woman, period. Write that down so you don't forget it. If you forget it, you may miss some of these other things that we're saying, because that's at the root of our conversation tonight. Income does not apply to the living man or woman, to their wages or to their pecuniary compensation for work, period. When they say that that's income, they lie to you, and they figure you don't know how to read, and they figure the people that are around you who should have been telling you these things haven't told you, and they're actually taking advantage of you and robbing you. And understand this, they have made head over heels, multiple level fortunes off of persons, targeted persons in certain communities who are tagged. It's not their identity, but they're tagged Negroes, blacks, and colors. And they've actually been draining and killing your families by virtue of draining your labor compensation under the misrepresented title of income. And they know that's a misrepresentation, but they know because they've miseducated the people that the average person doesn't know that, though all accountants know that, who keep doing these tax returns for them. Yes, in all these businesses, and they are members of the Roman Curia, and known members of the Roman Curia, but they'll never tell you that. So the businesses of the U.S. democracy, which is not the United States Republic, they're not the same platform, they're opposites, is for birthright theft purposes only. It exists absolutely for that purpose. It has no other meaning to exist. The U.S. democracy is a slave, servitude, peonage, invocation platform to invoke unum sanctum Roman church policy against Aboriginal peoples. That's fact. And it's the source of how you've been losing land that should have gone to the children. Say maybe if we did a little bit of research in your family, we could probably go back 3 generations and find land that them children should have right now. Untouched by the corporate state, untaxable by the corporate state. And that goes for almost everybody in this room. Islam.
Islam, when you said pecuniary, you said it doesn't pertain to.
I want you to be on the mic, because since it's very important that people hear the questions.
You said it does not apply to their wages or their pecuniary.
Yeah, pecuniary is whatever
That just
of
what
value
we call money or
that
value.
I transfer. Yes.
But would it be pecuniary interest or just?
Yes, even that.
Okay.
Yes. So anything of value that I transfer to you in private contract trade for your labor and your skills is not taxable. Are we clear? Any tax levied upon it is a fraud. Are we clear? You already know that's been going on, so you must understand already that you've been living under a total fraud for generations. And they've been destroying your families. That's only one of the tools that they use, aside from the driver's license, which also deals with only foreign corporate entities too, not with the living people. You know, so these things you need to know in order to kind of comprehend certain positions we might take or things that we may say that may be unfamiliar to you. You know, once you understand the rules, you understand why certain things are, why certain things are not, and why certain people, when you bring up certain subject matters, get upset because they may be compromised secretly and may have been part of your problem. And just because there are people around you, don't think that they ain't part of this game. This game works because you have conversos amongst you. Conversos is a term that's applied to people of Moorish Canaanite descent who betrayed their own and went over on Constantine's side under the guise of loving Jesus or under the guise of claiming Christianity. They're called conversos by the rest of the world. This is one of the major reasons to inform you, I must inform you, why other nationals don't trust black people. Because when you say that you're black, you just told the rest of the world that you're a traitor. Because that's one of the brands that the Dutch masters put on the conversos. Are we clear? The people from South America to the islands, to the north, to Greenland, to Americana, that's the islands in the Pacific and in the Atlantis. They are all of Canaanite Moabite descent, i.e. they're Al-Moroccans, or what you call Americans, descendants of Moroccans. That's their bloodline, that's their pedigree. Has nothing to do with belief, has nothing to do with religion, it is their pedigree. Are we clear? When the Europeans conquered the people in the lower of Maghreb, or what is called in the Olmec or the South Gate of the Americas, the first of us who they called Indians were some of the Arawak, or some of the people you would call now Haiti, Dominica, Boricain, mostly in that area, in the island, in the last of the Atlantis Islands. And they start calling us Indians because they were trying to take over the spice trade of the Moors. And they were trying to actually sail around South Asia, which you call today Africa. That's really South Asia. To Madagascar and Sindh. Sindh, the Moors renamed Sindh Hindustan a little over 2,000 years ago. And so the Europeans' corruption of Hindustan and the Madagascar area, they call India. However, that's not India, and the people are not Indians. However, in their quest for taking over the spice trades of the Moors, and Pedro the Moor navigated the Nino, you can check Columbus's records, navigated the Nino to the last of the Atlantis Islands, and they already knew that they didn't go to Cinder, and so they'll call us Indians of the West. That's how that became called West Indies. We're not Indians, and that ain't India. Are we clear? However, for lack of information, people have adopted those brands and tags too as being legitimate, and this causes much confusion about the Americas, and particularly the true heirs of the land, because they actually think that we Black Indians type thing. Both those tags are false. However, they're accepted by people who are ignorant, and they're accepted by people who are conversos. However, upon the acceptance of those brands, you have stepped off the platform of the obligations that were set by your forefathers before you in treaty and in constitutional principle, because you must be in the honor of your mothers and fathers to have right of estate. This is one of the major functional reasons why the Europeans put their family names on us, which are called brands. No matter how many generations, whatever activities take place with such persons in the names of another nation is lost, according to a state law. That's not complex. I'm trying to keep it simple. So you must understand the principle that when you hear as you evolve into the politics that are going on today, when you hear people talk about nationalization, they're talking about correcting that corruption in order for you to have standing at law. It doesn't fix anything immediately. It fixes the foundation for you to have any legal argument at all in relationship to estates. Are we clear? Then you're going to have to study more to fix things thereafter, if you get the point. But that corrects that flaw that makes such persons in law non-descendable. So that is the function of the branding. That's the legal reason why the Europeans put their family names on the descendants of the Moors, and why they created the Negro, black, and colored brand systems and promoted them as identities, and then paid off so-called chosen leaders to promote them as if they were ancient pedigrees of Asiatic African peoples, when in fact they were brand systems set up by the German Dutch company masters for stealing the estates of the Moors, who are under occupation at this time. Islam.
Islam. I have a question. I noticed a lot when I see the name corrections. I see a lot of the Nam Nagir. You mentioned about the name of war.
And that's what the Nam Nagirs are.
Yes.
Yeah.
I see a lot of Nam Nagir hyphenated free national name. I'm not understanding that concept.
This is what you'll see. Like, say, knowing that the people have to be educated. When people get first nationalized, usually that is done is what is called an immediate remedy. So to hyphenate it, and so that means heir. So with the Il or Bey, or Ali or Day or Al, that's an immediate claim in the principle of nationalization for the protections of that person's or that being's estate. Now, of course, you know and I know, even the issue of the estate, most of them have no idea that that relates to that. And many people come into the knowledge, and it may take them years to really get that. Not because it shouldn't be immediately told to them, because some people are really not teaching them. And we also have the problem, if you do some research into the FBI papers, where ministers were assigned to come into the Moorish movement and neutralize the national side of the movement. And so certain things or certain subject matters they deliberately stay away from. Deliberately. However, because they're, they have temples, and they say Moorish Americans, people coming in off the street, trust them. Because they don't have a reference point, if you get the point. And so this is again why people like myself, maybe Abdullah, and some other brothers and sisters who have really done research and have shared the information with the public, why we're sometimes unpopular with people even on our side of the nation, because it exposes them, because they're not all honorable either. And this is why this corruption has lasted so long, because we have conversers around us. And some are sent, and some are attracted because of their dark spirits. If you bring light, dark spirits will come around you, because they come to suck. Now, when you recognize them, you got to learn to deal with them, because they're always around. But you work to try not to let them put their spirit on you. And you always try to look for the good in them and try to give them the best in you in spite of it all. But when you, and we often are, naive and think that you don't have people around you with dark spirits, get ready to be a soldier, because you're going to get injured. So it occurs. Just like when you see in the Septuaginta, when it says two were in the field, one will be taken and the other will be left. Say if your right arm offends you, cut it off, which means don't take it personal. Stay focused on principle all the time, and be prepared to sever relationships, because it's part of the game. Like it or not, it's discomforting. It is, But be prepared, because that's what it is. And also, when you see in the Bible, when it talks about the narrow path, what it implies that when you really start dealing with truth and of the human condition, don't expect to be liked. People will say they want the truth. You bring the truth and they run. You know, or they'll get angry because you've also given yourself and you give them a mirror and they don't like what they say. Because people like to think that they're spiritual. They like to think that they're special, that God created us and we're special, more special than the guys across the street. Well, the truth is, no, you're not. Get over yourself and, you know what I mean? And we're all here for lessons, you know, and we are responsible to each other. So, if that's not a full answer, expand. If that's not a full answer to your question.
Yes, you answered it. So
Yeah.
Initially, that, like you said, that was a correct.
That's like an initiation.
Okay.
Just like if you have people coming in right now, you cannot assess every single energy unit that walks in body. You know, so you have different people at different degrees. However, in spite of anything and all things, the real politics is that they have vampires with straws in their neck. They don't know it. We're talking abstract realities. Are we clear? Meaning these people are under siege. They're not aware they're under siege. They're under occupation. They're not aware they're under occupation. They're suffering unum sanctum policy. They've been told by their leader guys and leader girls that they're suffering racism. They don't know that's a diversion argument designed by German masters. That has nothing to do with truth. They're suffering unum sanctum policy. Fact, cut and dry. That's really what's happening. And all scholars know that, all politicians know that, all imams know that, all rabbis know that, all high priests know that, all bishops know that, all these pastors know that, because all of them are Masons and Eastern Stars. Are we clear? They know the truth, and they got a Moorish fez, just like that, different colors in their different lodges, and they take oaths to Rome not to reveal the secrets to their own brethren. You see where Yahshua talked about, I come amongst my own, and they receive me not. What he's talking about, he came to rescue us, and we wanted to follow after the Romans. Now we don't even know we're of the same bloodline. And then the Romans are using Yahshua as a tag to deceive the world. They don't love Yahshua. They're the ones that murdered him. They even changed his name to Jesus to hide the true history. And then they have perpetrated a fraud on the entire world and blamed him for setting up the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed, which is called Christianity, from the European version when that was set up by Constantine and his mother. And then they have paid off guys among our own called pastors and reverends who themselves know this to be the truth. And yet they perpetrate that against their own people with a skull and bones agreement, kickback paid, and the people think that their skull and bones agreement or 501c3 and agreements like that type has to do with teaching the word of the Lord. No, that's their agreement with the Jesuit order not to rock the boat. Are we clear? And every one of your major so-called black leader guys that's been marching all over the place, keeping hope alive and everything else, are Masons and Knights of Malta. All of them. Now, the knowledge is not negative. Do not mistake that the knowledge of Masonry, etc., is negative, because Masonry really is Islam. But it's the science. It is not the dogmata. You know, and most people don't know that Islam comes in degrees too. You know, because most of the imams will never tell them that, because they're playing games with these people too. They're just not as dirty as some of these pastors, but they ain't necessarily cleaner either. They didn't run Prophet Muhammad out of Mecca for nothing, if you get the whole point. So the same problems that you deal with them running Yahshua, you know, out of Galilee, etc. Same thing with Prophet Muhammad. And most people don't know that they're cousins. They're distant cousins. And yet people have been thinking that Jesus is this Christian over here and Muhammad is this Muslim over here and here. far apart, same bloodline. Yes. And it wasn't no pale-skinned European. It was Asiatics like you and me, hair like lamb's wool, skin like burnished brass. All of this stuff they've been representing to the people is false. Period. Period, period, period. And it's uncomfortable because people have been groomed into these dogmatic systems and they become very defensive and offensive. When really, most of them have done no research. They just accept this information, trying to, which most people do, they want to be decent people. So they go to mosque, church, and temple and synagogue, most of them because they want to be decent people. And they want to learn what they think is moral. And they want to learn certain divine truths. However, the fact is, most of them never get it. I mean, they do nice club stuff and nice brotherhood stuff, but if you test any of them, most of them would fail in any historical test of any so-called religion that they claim. And if you put them in the same room and they ask certain questions, the next minute they argue with each other because they really haven't been taught a damn thing. But most people won't admit that. And that's another problem that we have. So when you're dealing with truth, you only have usually a handful of people that are brave enough to handle it. And that's another reason why most of the world is in servitude too. And why Rome is still ruling. Because the people are in dark and they have fallen in love with the darkness. You want to expand?
Yeah, so one will not lose their claim to their birthright, so what, or reparations, or what have you, for dropping that number.
I'm glad that you brought that up. See, because now reparations. Now I want you all to write that down. Now that you just said that, I'm going to show you how just in general conversation, very important things come up that people may not recognize as very important. Reparations is a legal term that relates in the international venue, whereas one identified specific nation of people who have been injured by another specific nation of people, specifically identified, must be restored to a former position, whereas that one nation, specifically identified, has injured this other nation, specifically identified. Reparations applies in that platform. It does not apply with people who are stateless. And people who have no nationality are declared stateless persons. This is again why nationalization is important. You know, and so a lot of times when people hear these things, it's interesting, but most people don't explain the legal ramifications to them and the history to make them understand it. And then others present it as if it's a belief system, which is another fraud. You're talking about birthright and estate. Whether they are atheists or not is irrelevant. Totally irrelevant. Do you understand? Some of your atheists are some of your most moral people. Some of your most demonic people claim religion. So, you know, don't get caught up in because somebody say, oh, I'm super duper Muslim of the Ahmadiyya style. So I'm the real Baptist and Methodist and all that. You know, don't get impressed. Do not get impressed. And when they finish talking, it's usually to your advantage to get them the large roll of toilet paper and say, you finished? Here. Because it's appropriate. It's appropriate. It really is. And funny, but it is absolutely appropriate. Islam, bro.
Islam. I was going to say that Israel would be an example to what you said. When they claim their nationality, they receive their
perfect fraud, but a designed fraud, a misrepresentation. Like for instance, now again, just as an interim for your information, a couple of Palestinian brothers and a Palestinian sister visited me a couple years ago, and one of them communicated with me actually recently, because they know that I know that Palestine is Canaan. And there were some other conversations about some things that are taking place here that was concerning them, because and this had to do with the trolling stuff, that they wanted to do certain things to certain people because they recognize that our rise is also their rise. Whereas we don't recognize the connection the rest of the world does. They're frustrated because we're still into this black codes, and it appears, that there's so many conversos amongst us that are holding up or misrepresenting or trying to knock things down when progress is being made, and they want to do things to them. Because they look at this different, whereas we don't think about taking people out. They think about taking people. They do not like Negro conversos because it's affecting the whole world, but our people don't know that. We've been so minimized. If you pay attention to our people, they're not aware that other nations are watching us because we've been minimized, if you get the point. So we feel so unimportant that we don't know that the actions that we take affects the entire world. We don't know that the fall of Asia and Africa is predicated on the fall of the Moors. When the Moors fell, all of the Asiatic African countries started falling in succession. Our fall predicated the fall of everybody else. And we fell the lowest and know the least about our true history and our bloodline. And yet we're at the center of this whole mess. That's true. And so when you're presenting this information to our people, they're so mentally disconnected and disassociated that, we're trying to get a sandwich, trying to pay a phone bill or something. We just have no idea that all that we do affects the rest of the world because we've been so minimized, if you get the point. And while the rest of the world, the nations of the world, while they've been compromised, they still have their nationalities. And so when they do any business, they're protected by a certain amount of international law, even though they may still have problems from colonists. Palestinians, they know they're Palestinians. They know they ain't light-skinned green people and all, crayons and all this kind of stuff that our people here think is reality. They don't know that those are nom de guerre. And many of them passionately don't know that. But that's their leaders' fault, who have been compromised by the Romans. Because all scholars know that those are brands. Not some. All scholars know that the Negro black color paradigm was set up by the East Dutch Company masters. This is why even when they're sending opium and cancers into our communities, they even sell them blunts called Dutch. They're playing with them right to their face and poisoning them at the same time, including the fact that they're putting counter enzymes in there that actually affects the genomes that actually makes males feminine and makes females masculine. It's a genocide attack. These people don't even know that they're under attack. So again, you try to present this information trusting that the people pay attention and do a little bit more, because you can't reteach them. Rome has had a couple hundred years to really screw us up. But if you can get a person, a living man or being, thinking again, respecting their own divine mind, a lot of memory will come back to them once they stop fearing to think. Once they get out of the box of what they think religion is, that actually fences them in, it limits them. The masses don't know they're not getting the religion. The imams got religion, the rabbis got religion, Master Masons have religion, Illuminati got religion, they all get religion. But they've been using it as a knowledge base to keep the masses dumb. And the masses think they get religion, they get dogma. The same way the masses get fiat, think they got money. It works hand in hand. And so when you start trying to reason with them, they will attack you thinking that you're attacking their beliefs. Because they've been trained that beliefs equal knowledge and spirituality. It does not. It equals mind control. And that's all it is and all it ever was. Islam, good brother Mike. Give the brother a mic.
Oh, I think she had one question first.
Oh, excuse me. Go ahead, sis.
Okay.
Good. Push it up.
Push it
Yeah.
up.
Now, when you say nationalize, now, we don't have to prove who we are, they have to prove who we are, right? So
No.
do we,
No.
we have to
Let
prove
me,
that?
no, you don't have to prove it.
Okay,
You have to declare it.
okay, so.
Let me explain to you so you'll understand nationalize. See that baby in your hands? All right, now, in truth of nature and nationality, nativity, the navel, nativity, nationality are all related. Nation, nationality, natio, to be born, to come into life. That's what it means. All right, so when you deal with nativity, your navel, your life cord, etc., that means the matriarchy principle of nature herself. So nations and mother are equals. All right, so when you give birth to us, your sons, who are first females in your seeded womb, because there's no male seed, there's no male eggs, and you dance, you send others to dance around us and sperm us up, and then we come out like we got something going on, you know. But we're just simply neutered females, which is why we call Y gene, distinguished from the X gene. And so we need to understand these things about ourselves in truth and in nature, so that we don't get these warped ideas about what we think is and is not. And this is why it's important for people to really know the truth, that Allah is a feminine name. Allah is you. It's the Moabite woman. It is. Now, many people that get into Islam be looking at the general imagery of Allah as a man with a turban sitting on the throne, golden throne, in the skies over Mecca type thing. And I understand that's the way they were taught. However, that's not true at all. And yet the people who teach that know that that's false. Are we clear? However, it trains people to disciplines, if you get the point. And so certain disciplines are good. However, it doesn't mean that they're telling you the truth either, if you get the point. Now, so in the rule of civilization, your mother. At different times, you may care for her children, she may care for your children. At other times, your children may visit her house. So that means that is a national or citizen, so you gotta look at these in another way. So look at your children as nationals and citizens. All right, those terms can be mitigated, but on the surface, let's look at what they really represent. They mean your children distinguished from your children. So your nation state, say, what's your name? Your attribute? Huh? Lisa? So this nation is Lisa, and they will be Lisarians, as an example. And they visit Tamarians. You're all really sisters, but that distinguishes your children from her children. So we're talking extended families that we call nations. Are we clear? Let's keep this simple, because it's very simple if you explain it. A child can really understand it. It only gets corrupted when people try to got some agenda. Let's keep this stuff simple. All you need to do is study nature. Now, say you get sick. Say you get sick, or someone injures you, right? This is nationalization. So now you got your babies, 2 or 3 of them over here in your house. They've been there for a while. They've been stroking, doing whatever, and so you're sick, or you're injured, or you're under attack. So you nationalize to protect the interests of your citizens and your children. So your child that's over there off your breast, you say, well, we love you and everything. Oh, off the breast. Go to your mama. Oh, what's your nationality? Go to your mama. We got to get this house in order. That's called nationalization on the political realm. And what you've seen Hitler do is exactly that. What you've seen Castro do is exactly that. What you've seen Chavez do is exactly that. The sovereign power is the power of the mother to save the nation, i.e. save the babies. In principle, nationalization is this. The time has come, because of whatever the circumstance, that every man, every woman, and every child must confess their own and worship under their own vine and fig tree. That's nationalization. But yet most people would not recognize that that statement is nationalization, because it's usually misrepresented. And yet many people repeat it. That's a nationalization statement. Are we clear? Now, as an example, back to the brother, what you were talking about earlier, with Israel. Now, what you actually have is Khazarians and others pretending to be Jews and are not Jews, which you see in the book of John 8:44, where Yeshua says, you say you're Abraham's children, but if you were Abraham's children, you would do the works of Abraham. However, you seek to kill me, a man who is telling you the truth. He said, get thee behind me, get away from me, Satan. You are what? Of your fathers. When you speak of a lie, you speak of your own kind. Are we clear? So now we have a whole body of people claiming that Jews are not Jews. That's what has happened in Canaan. They even changed the maps and everything. Islam, good brother.
Islam. Is that
did I? You kind of understand that? Now, let me clear this up. I'm going to tell us out. So we are in trouble, economic, socially, and politically. To save the nation all over the world, this is what is done. When a nation is going down to death, when it's going down to tubes, economically and politically, you save the nation. The first political act by any sovereign anywhere on planet Earth is to nationalize. So that must be clear so that there's no vagaries concerning nationalization. And I think a lot of people have misgivings or miscomprehensions of what that really means, because it's usually not explained. And I trust that I satisfied your question with that. Dear brother, and then yourself. Islam.
Well, what you were saying about Israel, is that why Trump withdrew from the United Nations? Because they wouldn't recognize Israel as a...
Let me say this to you about Trump. Trump is a Knights Templar. Many of the things that Trump is doing is actually chess moves. A lot of things that he seems to be supporting, it is really attacking to cause others, trolls and others, to take a position to oppose him when actually he's looking for the opposite. Some of it is because that's his assignment. And unbeknownst to some people, I'll tell you what I recognize, and I know that most people would disagree. In the background, Trump and Obama have been working together. And yet Trump's been talking trash about Obama and everything, and we already know how that goes back and forth. And then you talk about the Hillary relationship with Obama and stuff like that. Well, I'm telling you, because I already know that Obama had an assignment, and he fulfilled his assignment. And though all of those people are compromised, I'm not defending, they're all compromised. Trump, it can be safely said that he is the last president for the United States Corporation. In fact, actually Obama was. Trump is more or less a mitigator for transference of a lot of things that are taking place in the background. And the elections that appeared is a placement more than real election. He's pivotal to very radical economic and political transfers that are taking place that are so big and so vast that the average person wouldn't be able, he himself wouldn't be able to continue. Because it is the culmination of political and spiritual battles that are continuing, but he's key. So what you see in the mainstream news about Donald Trump, take it with a grain of salt. And that's not a defense of him, it's because I can see through, because I know the politics. So I'm saying what I'm saying from having other knowledge that we're not going into right now. You get the point? So don't follow the party line, just put it that way. Observe, but don't follow the party line. Some of the things that he's doing, that he will do, is not necessarily things that we would necessarily agree with, but the outcome is still ultimately the uniting of Asia. Any kind of way you look at it is the uniting of Asia. Some things he's doing because he has to do, some things he's doing because he has no choice, and some things he really doesn't want to do, and he may take different positions, but he's still not going to have any choice. He's going to be moved where it needs to be moved. And what is happening is that the United States Corporation Company is being dissolved. And they're disallowed to set up any more shell corporations throughout the planet. And the unum sanctum policies of Rome that have run the planet for these last few hundred years is being sorely and severely interrupted. And negotiations are taking place all around the world to bring some kind of solution while people are still also trying to maintain the old guard, which is still going to be removed anyway. So on the spiritual level, you have the transference of the lords of the Piscean era and the Piscean energy shading out, and the Aquarian lords moving in. And it will reflect on the planet. You know, so again, you're looking at cause and effect cosmology reflected upon the living, truthfully. And I trust I answered your question to some reasonable degree.
Yeah, yes, you have.
Yeah, all right. Islam, can you give him the mic?
You were speaking of nationalization as saving the nation.
In principle, that's what is, that is, like say we're at your house, right? And it's, you know, whether we invade the house or whether we've been just there and comfortable, and, you know, and we've taken over all rooms, and your children don't have rooms for themselves. And your children are starting to get abused by your visitors. So you say something along this line. All right, everybody, you ain't got to go home, party's over, but you got to leave here. That's nationalization. Look at it. Look at these things that simple, because it's exactly what it is on a national scale. It is absolutely no different. Why a lot of people won't get into this information is because the patriarchy system set up by the popes of Rome is partially deliberately structured in such a way to minimize woman, or to limit the psychological power of woman or the truth of woman, if you get the point. Because part of the papacy rulership is the subjugation of the Moabite woman. When you go to these big churches in different places and you see them badges, Masonic badges on the back of their cars, and you see the Sphinx head, and then you see the Moorish sword, double-edged sword, over her head, that means the subjugation of the Moabite woman. When they subjugate the woman, they subjugate us. With us not really knowing the real history of the politics, we often get into what gender fights, you know, men competing with women and women competing with when that's actually an artificial fight created by the Europeans. Are we clear? When the real deal of it is because we don't know our positions in life. Are we clear? And women don't know their position. We've been corrupted with dead culture. And when we try to fix problems in our family, we don't fix them, we end up splitting up. Are we clear?
Clear.
Including the fact that most people don't know that the marriage vows is really a curse coming from the corporate state. And they try to protect it like it's divine. So most marriages really don't last over 3 years. If they do, the only reason they're together is because of economics. It's been corrupted by the dark priesthood. They don't even know it's a bank bond. So it's a lot of ugly that needs to be fixed. We need to start rejecting things from Rome and doing things within our own jurisdiction that's uncontaminated. So the people don't know the difference between marriage and matrimony. They think it's the same thing. It isn't. Marriage is a curse by the priesthood. And they're going to probate all estates too. You know, so that's another thing that we need to understand these things. You know, one thing leads to another. This stuff is a wicked web that has been weaved upon us. And it ain't no mystical devil. It's the priesthood. And always was. And they're the least suspected. This is why this stuff is so strong. And the people themselves support them and deliver their children to them. This is why this thing is so ingrained. They think these people are spiritual. These people are demons. So they're vampires. It doesn't mean that everyone that walks in that area is demonic. 90% of them are though. And that's the truth. They're not there for spiritual development of people. They're there for selfish gain and power. Ain't got a damn thing to do with no spirituality, period. Excuse me. Go ahead.
So can you tie that into what the prophet Noble Drew Ali did back in 1928 when he, or should say in 1913, when he nationalized the country? The Truth A document and the AA 22214.
No, that's not Noble Drew Ali. That's CM. Now, so let's back up. Let's back up. When you understand the history here at the North, we can go back into the kingship oligarchy setup, which is the people who claim to be Congress are really a private kingship oligarchy. Write that down, don't forget it. They're really a private kingship oligarchy. And they are acting as board of directors for the unum sanctum policies enforced on the world on behalf of the Roman Curia directed to the Black Pope. Are we clear? That's the truth. That is the politics. And so people who don't really understand what's going on, say my congressman and stuff like this, they don't know that these people are not their congressmen. They're board of directors under the secret treaty of Verona for overthrowing the republic and instituting the feudal law operations. Now, understand this, and we go across this often with people so they can look at correlatives. We try to inspire you to pay attention to details, timelines, dates, etc., certain political activities, and you will be able to be like a detective, start putting things together. See, because certain ugly truths in politics is never told to the public. If you don't have an eye for analyzing things, they'll put things in your face, which they always do, and it's hidden in plain view. And yet it injures you, but yet you step in it. It's sort of like doo-doo on lawn. I thought it was brown grass. No, it wasn't brown grass. You know, but it's what it is. You know, you got to learn what it is. 1913, when Noble Drew Ali set up the old Canaanite temple, essentially, when you study the correspondence between the Queen of England, you know, Noble Drew Ali, and the adepts who were put in place with Noble Drew Ali for establishing the old Canaanite temple, essentially was very clear that he was holding them to their obligations of charge, etc., relative to good government at the North, knowing that the secret treaty of Verona was being effectively instituted or activated. Are we clear? When Noble Drew Ali was on the scene, though the Republic was under siege, it was still under the Republic, meaning that generally it was still availed, if you get the point, although under siege. not to be completely dissuaded until what you call around 1933 with the so-called bank holiday with Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Now, if you look at the congressional records and you look at the political activities that took place at North America, you will notice a correlation of activities such as with the Woodrow Wilson administration and the Knights of Malta and different members of the Roman Curia under England and the bankers, etc., and P2 Masons of the Jesuit order meeting at Jekyll Island off the coast of Georgia. They converted all allodial titles and all aboriginal titles to mortgages and deeds, 1913. For people who don't do research, they would not pay attention to the correlations. People who pay attention to the correlations would recognize that was a political move. And so you'll see today, most of our people, if you mention to them an allodial title or an aboriginal title, not only they don't know what you're talking about, most of them never even heard of it. Yet, that's 1913. Are we clear? What that does is took all rights of property in a legal perspective, not lawful, in a legal perspective, out of the hands of the people and placed all of their property under a feudal law platform, which is absolutely unconstitutional. And so when you start looking at these principles, you understand Drew Ali emphasizing with the Moors in relationship to the Moors Divine National Movement, primary to this movement is the enforcement of the Constitution. Primary to this movement is the enforcement of the Constitution. You know, and so when you look at these correlatives, you know, you can pretty much deduce the political maneuverings and the chess game that's being played out. And yet someone who does not research would not see that because they'd be busy worshiping Noble Ali rather than paying attention to the things that he said, or looking at things that he warned us about, or instructions that he directed us to, so that we could seriously prepare ourselves to take our places amongst the affairs of men to reclaim the estate. And you can safely say, if you talk to most Moorish Americans that are pretty much honorable people in the temples, their thoughts aren't guided in the directions of what I just said. As a matter of fact, many of them think that me saying that is against the movement. And yet that's fact. That's documented fact. And yet they're injured by it. You know, and if they looked at Act 1 of the Moorish Science Temple of Divine Constitutional Bylaws, that the chairman, you know, and the moderators, which reflects down to the Grand Sheiks and Assistant Grand Sheiks, they're put in power to make law and to enforce law. And yet they've been telling the people for the most part that Drew Ali didn't teach civics. And that this is entirely a religious organization. And will totally stay away from enforcing that Constitution. So, and then when you look at this, the dynamics, and this is one of the controversies that you'll see is current. Now, when I did lesson book 14 for my children in the late 80s, and I published it in the early 90s, you know, I separated because I already knew that we had conversos amongst us. And I was working from my pockets and from my mind, knowing the bigger politics and knowing that I'd be a target, if you get the point, and that a lot of people wouldn't even accept where I was coming from, which is why I did lesson book 14 and I split it deliberately. Also to catch people that I knew, see, because it's sort of like when you know certain things, you already know it's going to draw certain people. Some will come as friends, smiling in your face, waiting with a dagger to get you later, you know, to get your trust. And then you have others, because they're beneficiaries of this fraud, that come around, befriend you, who troll, pretend they're friendly with you, but they're setting you up for something else for later. You know, and this is how this actually works. Knowing how the politics operate here, what I was always doing was, in my mind, chess moves. Do you understand? Chess moves. knowing that this thing is much bigger than most people think it is, knowing that any minute I could be taken out, if you understand what I'm saying. But my also determination is that to my position, you know, for every breath that I have, I'm not going to let my children, if I can help it, or my grandchildren suffer this nigger bullshit that we've been seeing for generations, if I can do something about it, because I know what's up. You know, I ain't guessing what's up. I know what's up. You know, no one knows every detail, but I know what's up. And I wasn't going to sit back and be silent looking at our people being destroyed, and then looking at people on our side dealing with them in the name of organizations, knowing they're holding back information, knowing that they got these people on a social treadmill, making them think that movement is, you know, activity is it, but no solutions. And so I would, you know, write on and examine and research subject matters that a lot of people would dance around or be, you know, play it safe. They want to play it safe. They want to be liked, you know. And every once in a while, and that's why I did the books the way I did them, because I already knew at every other stage I dropped something out, and then the roaches would scatter. Then you could see who they are, because they pull their mask off. You know how they say you think people are your friends? They think people are sincere, and so you split things, right? And then you tell it. It's in your face, right? And then you drop another level of it later, like a chess move. And then they're forced to take because they're forced to take a position, if you get the point. And so it's like shedding. As an example, let me say this to you. There's a whole nother area of activities, including off-world activities, off-planet activities, that took place since the Eisenhower administration. Dwight D. Eisenhower, a German Dutchman who was the CEO for the United States Service Corporation. Now, when Dwight D. Eisenhower shut down consular court, as an example, in 1956, they relinquished in 54 and 56. 54, and then 56 they relinquished jurisdiction on the Kingdom of Morocco, but did not relinquish jurisdiction at the heartland, which is North America. All right. So what they did was promote the 14th Amendment pseudo Negro citizenship paradigm under marching Negro preacher leader guys who gave the appearance of reverence, of love, of caring about their people. Now, anyone who really pays attention to what was really happening and not get caught up in personality, recognize that our people had their own hotels, they had mom and pop stores all over the place, and after they got these Negro marching civil rights guys, no more of our hotels, no more of our mom and pop stores, no more of our little land places that we had throughout the South and the North, and now they all got plastic cards, they're sick as hell, got no foundation, etc., following behind these Negro marching leader guys, because most of them were reverends, and so these people trusted them because they run around saying Jesus, and it's just simply the truth. Now, people who look at cause and effect look at things for what they are. People who are not start trying to protect images of men, images that are not the realities. So when you look at the Eisenhower administration, and they neutralize the consular court, which is Article 3. That's Article 3 court, because it is the platform upon which you deal with diversity of nationality. That's very important. It is the proper platform by which any controversy of person and property, civil and criminal, in diversity of nationality is to be addressed. That is the law of the land. Are we clear? Article 3, Section 2, consular court. And of course, persons who are in positions of authority on our part are essentially, or any part of anyone, are essentially consulars.
What document?
That would be the Constitution, Article 3. You know how they say Article 3? What is, like for instance, like those who know the real history know there's been no lawful courts at North America since 1789.
Right.
They know that. They know that people who are not studied don't know that. They know that people who are not studied actually think that when they go to these trading venues of these corporations that they think they're going to court. They're going to human trafficking auction houses under unum sanctum policy. And people who've been compromised and who are participating in that secretly really don't want that brought up. Are we clear? They really don't want that brought up. And the deal of it is, now keep this in mind, this is very important. Consular Courts, Article 3. In removing that, and I want you all to pay attention to this, and I want you to do research on this so you don't forget it. Now, when there's said death in your family, all the property immediately goes to probate. Right? Heirs, like say these babies, say your grandma has, as an example, 150 acres of land in North Carolina. And part of it with water coming through, even some springs, etc. Right? Now, say one of the Jesuit order guys want your land. They'll tax you out of that land under misclassification, no matter what you do. When say your grandmom dies and it's supposed to come to you and the children, you supposed to be well off, they'll put a tax burden on you so heavy that it'll make your head spin and they'll steal your estate under probate.
Right.
Keep this in mind. In an Article 3 court, that can never happen. Are we clear? Why? Because all parties must be clearly identified because it's an issue of diversity of nationality protected by Constitution and treaty law, and they cannot initiate any action whatsoever until the status of the beings are absolutely prepared for the record, and immediately any foreign European would immediately lose. I don't care what law firm or anything, that's why nobody wants consular court. That's why a lot of people are mad at me for even bringing it up, including some people that allegedly were even selling books that I printed that always been that position. And acting like I made that up. That's Article 3. And that's the heart of the Moorish movement, is the enforcement of that Constitution. The Article 3 was abrogated in order to steal our estates. So now you have the probate of estates, and then you have ex parte actions. What are ex parte actions? This is where the corporate state makes moves on your behalf without your permission, without your presence, against you, and then rule against you and just, whether you're present or not, and just take your stuff. How's that done? The absence of consular court. And so what you'll see, a lot of trolls and a lot of COINTELPRO operatives among us will start arguing other semantics because they don't want you to go here. Because that's what they're really trying to protect. Because some of them have jobs that are related to administering in this area. And as long as we have this problem, some of them got private businesses where they can be selling us something all the time, long as we're sick, long as our status is dead. You fix this, and a lot of the bullshit goes away, and a lot of the opportunists among our own can't sell you stuff because the problem will be resolved. This is why a lot of people are mad at Taj Tarik for executing Lesson Book 14. Well, they didn't think I was going to do that. Well, I did. But the deal of it is, you know, I solicited, you know, a lot of new fresh blood because I already knew I would have to get some uncontaminated people because I knew a lot of people around me had dark spirits. I already knew that. I knew it for quite some time. You know, but the deal of it is, it's spreading across the country and it's spreading in the islands too. And in other nation states where, you know, we're still getting communications. And update for some of you, I went to Chicago, you know, past week, and update for some of you, you know, the administrators of the Moorish Science Temple of America, the present administrators, which I will not name because we're still in some communications, from actually two different factors in Chicago, sent emissaries to me. And they didn't come to the meeting, but they sent to give me support and let them know that they have my back and know that there's some people opposing me, but encouraging me to hold true to this. And the operative administrator of the Moorish Science Temple of America, that's operative presently, you know, communicated with me directly even the next day, said he got my back. He said he's glad that I'm doing what I'm doing. He understands the opposition. He already understands the controversy of it. He said, but it should have been done generations ago. However, then you got others who are sorely angry. Sorely angry. I mean, bitterly angry. I mean, vehemently, ugly angry. For me telling the truth. You know, and so they'll try to distort this whole issue. But, and so that allowed since the Eisenhower administration for them to accelerate stealing our states. And this absence of the consular court has allowed them to gentrify neighborhoods. How many people would even make that relationship? Most people don't have the eyes to see it because they have tunnel vision. This is also the danger of ignorance. Ignorance is dangerous, you know. But then everybody around you is not necessarily ignorant. And so others who've been benefiting from the injury of our people, you know, are angry because it exposes them and exposes their real motives. But some people came into this movement to help. Some people came in to undermine. But in order to win trust, they have to look like they're honorable for a while. And then they're like sleepers. And then certain cues or certain things occur, and then they start activating, but they show their colors. Now, when you stick with principle, you can answer issues. Don't get caught in personality. Stick with principles, then you can see who is who. And as the Constitution for the United States is being enforced, a lot of people are going to be uncovered. Are we clear? And again, like I say to you, when you're talking about the consular issue, that's it. And so when you're talking about Drew Ali and his mentioning the lost estate, this is really where it is. Or he says that the Europeans are living off your virtues, or the discomforting situation that Malik, that people know as Malcolm X, when he went over, made the Hajj and everything, and he started talking about white and black stuff, and that French Muslim told him that slave language, ain't no such damn thing, and that to you Maghrib is evening prayer. The rest of the world knows that Maghrib is Morocco, the most extreme west. Brother, you left home. You know, and then of course, Malcolm they couldn't buy him off, so they murdered him. You know, so even the issue with Malcolm, it's bigger than most people think. It's much bigger than most people can ever imagine. It involves the truth. of your estate, of all of our people. You know, and so again, when you start dealing with knowledge as opposed to dealing with emotionalism, you start, how do you say, stepping on tender nails of people. You think that's really loving their people? They're really opportunists. Go ahead, Islam.
I just wanted to clarify something, because in my studies I noticed that in the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, which in 1787
Yes.
came before.
Now, slow down.
Mhm.
So let's keep this in mind.
Gotcha.
You know, because people need to pay attention to timeline,
Gotcha.
right? So that's the treaty, and I'm gonna do this short.
Okay.
Right. So it's the treaty, right?
Correct.
Right. Then you have what? The ordinance.
Yes.
Then you have Constitution.
Yes, 1789.
Now,
So in my studies, what I see, that if you violate the treaty,
you violate
Articles
the
20
Constitution.
of 25,
You-
which sets up the council,
There
you
go.
violated the Constitution.
There you go.
So therefore,
They're one and the same.
everything's in violation.
Article 6 tells you everything. All debts, all contracts and debts entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be binding against the United States under this Constitution as under the Confederation, and all treaties made or which shall be made in pursuance thereof shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges of every state shall be bound thereby, and any laws or constitutions of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. They're one document. Now you see why they mad because I brought this up? Because now persons who should have been enforcing it or exercising authority trusted to them have been in breach, because they've been staying away from these subject matters while our people are being injured by the day. And others amongst us who pretended to be helping to enforce this Constitution are mad as hell when I started presenting questions on the consular court to the whole country, not just to this club, because I recognized that certain people were deliberately stagnating. I ain't arguing, I watch, I pay attention to things, you know, but I can play chess too. You know what I mean? I already knew this when I came in, because like I told, you know, Grand Sheikh's Dereer when I came in, I said, look, I'm telling you already, when I come in, I'm going to come in fighting. That's how far ahead I saw. I saw all of this stuff ahead of time. I used to tell my son these things when he was a little boy. And if anybody knows my son, he will tell you. These things that we're talking now, I told him when he was a little boy, because I could see it. You know what I mean? So, when I tell you this movement is my bride, she's my bride.
Speak to what a consular court is.
Consular, this is what it is. Let's keep this very clear. Let's keep this very clear. A consular court is the political platform that deals with diversity of nationality all over the planet. Are we clear? It's not limited here. It's been limited here because they've been holding servitude. In other words, the U.S. democracy platform was introduced to neutralize the consular court so they could enslave us. And to enforce it, they paid Negro leaders, gave them jobs to keep this BS going on and to suppress anyone who would ever bring this up. That's why I separated the lesson books. I already saw this ahead of time. I saw this years ago. I wrote that book in '89 for my babies. And I separated because I already saw the demons. Don't make me good or nothing like that. I'm just charging you with the cheap sneaks. But I am psychic. And that's a fact. You know, I don't say all things I see because when I was young, I used to suppress it because it would get me in trouble. And I didn't understand it. But as I grew up, I understood it because I got 5 eyes. I can see on multiple levels. I always have. You know what I mean? I used to think it was imaginary stuff. You know, like children who grow up. But it's just what it is. And as I got older, I just got tired of trying to live what I thought people would accept me. I don't care what they accept me now. If I see it, I see it. It's what it is. You know what I mean? So I can see it. Big deal. It's all what it is. And so I would write what I see. But I kept it for my children and myself. You know, and life just led me to what I'm doing. It's not what I asked for, it's what it is just happening.
Will you make both parts of Lesson 14 available?
Oh, I'm getting ready to publish the rest of it. There's my publisher over there. You know, right here. And so, yes, she will be receiving all my stuff. You know, and stuff that you don't see. You know, but, and it's a chess move. And the other deal is I understand my own frailties and my own shortcomings, and I'm like a multi-level person. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? But I don't have enough bodies to do. My mind is bigger than my body. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? I can pick any particular thing that I'm able to do and live a life on it alone. Do you understand? So I'm always thinking on multiple levels. And as I'm older, I'm not trying to meet somebody's image. When I was younger, I tried to meet images. And I had to grow up and start recognizing why I was uncomfortable about certain things. You know, why I would always get in trouble. I'd join organizations and get in trouble because I could see and talk myself into trouble all the time. You know, when I ran Sunday school, same thing. When I went to Jehovah's Witness, same thing. When I went to the Nation of Islam, same thing. Gained the Moorish Science Temple of America, same thing. Saw the pattern, and I said, if I'm going to be honest, I can't be under, I can associate with them, but I can't be under anyone's jurisdiction. That's why I founded the Round Table. Not to deny anything else, it's because that way I can say what I see and not feel as though I'm being insubordinate, because I get very uncomfortable when I see injustice. I can't, I'm just not the type of person that can sit back and take a few notes, a payoff, and play this silly ego roles with titles watching my people suffer. I can't do that. Yet I can take any skill that I have, any multiple skills I have, and live quite comfortable. But I keep my life simple because I already know my relationship with Rome, if you get the point. Rome knew I'm coming after them, and so Rome was after me too. I already know that. I knew that when I was younger. You know, I just accept it. It's what it is. But I am a soldier. You know what I mean? So I also keep certain relationships at a minimal, so if I'm taken out, it limits the injury to others, if you get the point. But Rome know I came for them. You know, and I just don't hide it anymore. You know, I knew when I was a child, but I didn't know it the way I know it as I got older. You know, so, and the other deal of it is, you know, like, for instance, when I was young, you know, like them, you know, what I used to see, what I used to call my father the gray haze. I could tell when people were getting ready to die. I could look at them and tell, and know they're going to die within days. You know what I mean? And these things, and I used to, you know, talk and stuff like that, and these, you know, people, what the hell? I didn't understand those things, you know what I mean? And I could see things, you know, so it's what it is. And I was, you know, I started shutting down when I was around 14 or 15 because I, you know, felt out of place, you know. But it's what it, like, for instance, I could pick up some books and read a little bit, and I got the book. I mean, that's just what it is, you know. But enough of that. But the deal with it always got me in trouble. If you get the point. And the other point is, I'm sick of this bullshit with these fake people that keep saying they love people and that they're spiritual, and they're really vampires and sucking off these people. You know what I mean? And again, I learned some lessons, and then going back in the mind, then I go back to some lessons because you're told certain things or you're imprinted with certain things. And so certain things I was told about anyway. So I already knew some things, it's just that until I got older, I didn't recognize, you know, you're told certain things to do and certain things not to do. Don't do this, let this be, you know, stuff like that. But it is what it is. However, point that I'm making is, that's why I separated the lesson books. Because that's all this stuff coming. I saw it in 89, 90. And I already understand the politics, and I already know I have limited resources myself, so I use this. I use chess moves. What I would do, you know, like, this is kind of funny to you. This is kind of funny. I put a 68-foot addition on my sister's house, right? And we did another bathroom in the front end near the family room, and I double zincs in there. And I was sitting in the bathroom. Is this? And I was sitting in the bathroom. I was sitting in the bathroom reading, and I always would take a book in the bathroom. In the main bathroom in my sister's house, we also had I built custom bookshelves because we always read, because that's how my father did, and we wouldn't even go to the bathroom without a book. So I was reading this book, and I saw, you know how you get those little spots in your eyes that floats? Well, this little float kept coming in my eye. Islam. And it was like this little blue, like a little blue dot, like, and I was kept trying to, you know, I thought, you know, like when you think something in the eye and you're trying to see if it hurts or something like that, and it didn't, and it kept going like this, and I followed it, and I just floated right off the toilet, onto the floor. I could see everything, and I just floated right on the floor. I was so embarrassed that I was hoping nobody came in the bathroom. But the deal of it is, the ceiling opened up, and I shot right up, totally conscious. And we have like 500 feet back on the property was this railroad, this DeRoos Avenue in Pennsauken. And I was just shooting past everything. And I went to South Asia, and then I came back real quick. And when I got up, I was first kind of embarrassed, you know what I mean? I'm laying on the floor with a book in my hand. And, but anyway, I started, because I always wrote poetry too, even when I was young. And so I started writing, you know how you start writing and you can't keep up with your thoughts? So I ran in one of my cars and went out Pennsauken, Mark, and I bought a boom box, and I just picked up a whole box of tapes. And I came back to the house, went in the basement, so I wouldn't disturb anybody. Just stuck tapes in, and I started talking, because I couldn't write as fast as I was thinking. And that's when I wrote Moors, the Uniting of a Nation for my children. There's a little story behind that. And I started writing some of my other lesson books, some of that you see now. But, so actually then afterwards I recognized that I actually astro traveled. I didn't recognize it at the time. But it's not something I didn't do before, I just didn't see it that way when I was younger, if you get the point. But anyway, back to the point, because it's getting boring. I want to get to the status, your concern and your status. Because those are questions that you should ask yourself and answer. Has the IRS ever seized your labor compensation? This is where they seize accounts or levy accounts, etc. Your bank accounts, or taking your personal property without a constitutionally sanctioned court and trial transcript, a constitutionally commanded indictment. They do these actions, they're called ex parte actions, without due process. And they do it because you're absent of an Article 3 consular court. And they've been sharing the spoils with some of your so-called black leaders, which is why some of your black leaders are upset with Tajik. Because when you start waking up to this stuff and start countering it, they can't get their backdoor payoffs. Are we clear? So when they get pissed off, understand that their motives is not what appears like on the surface. So they'll make a semantic argument, but they will not tell you the issue of probate and ex parte actions initiated against us on a daily basis to rob us. Are we clear?
Is that why you put everything in trust?
Yes, exactly. That's why I started promoting that, because I already knew they were accelerating. In other words, I was trying to put things in place to counter them. But I saw that they were accelerating more, and I saw people on our side were trying to stagnate activity. That's why Sister D and myself, she started drafting up questions. And then I started editing them and expanding on them, and we put it out for the public to address. And of course, it took a life on its own, but boy, did it make the roaches come out. But I'm telling you, this is really the issue. It's not the court. The existence of the court, the lack of the existence of the court, of the consular court has allowed this to happen to us. And so the people will start attacking my position to avoid talking about what's really behind what my position is. And that's the ex parte actions and the probate of estates. Without due process, and they've been gentrifying our neighborhoods with it. Are we clear? And they know this too. See, but when you start waking people up and people start taking responsibility and start neutralizing these things, what happens is your Negro leader guys and stuff that's been smiling in your face don't get them backdoor payoffs. And they can't sell you stuff because you're sick, meaning that we're politically sick. So a lot of people make a lot of finance by overpricing nationality cards and other processes to our people, or selling them UCCs and a whole bunch of other processes, and they make finance at the expense of our people, knowing that there's no cure, if you get the point. You fix this, and a lot of the other stuff will fix itself. They don't want this stuff fixed. They want you to be in the struggle so they can suck off you along the way. You get the point? Because many of these people outside of doing intellectual property theft and other things can't produce anything on their own. You understand? And you start exposing this system, it exposes them. And they can't do the leech stuff that they've been doing for years and decades. In other words, people need to know what liberty actually is. They need to know what allodial rights are, distinguished from privileges. All of these things are distinct and must be comprehended by us, because all of them have been weaponized. All things related to us, from food to language to everyday interchange, has been weaponized. You need to know that. Therefore, uncomfortably, we can't afford to be comfortable. Meaning that you can do everything that you can do to be private and not, interfere with anyone else. And you can be in a corner minding your business, they're gonna come in there and mess with you. They will not allow you to be at peace. So the deal of it is, my position is to educate the people the best I can, to bring people around who do study and will help in educating our people and sharing and getting our people active to neutralize the activities that have taken place that have actually caused the entrenchment of this corruption and the peonage that exists among our people now. Islam, good brother. Give him the mic. Give him the mic.
A question about allodial. Is it possible to even get that anymore?
Allodial. Now, yes, let's put it this way, and this is very important. Now, everyone take in consideration what my answer is going to be to him, and consider what he says. Is it possible to get anything allodial anymore? This is my answer to you, and this is the challenge to all of us. Since we've all claimed to have some relationship with the divine, have we not? Whether we say Elah, Allah, Yahweh, Jesus, whatever names we use to implicate the divine, if we have anything divine about us whatsoever, then certainly we should be assured that that which is right and correct can be instituted. Is it not true? And if it cannot be, we have no right to continue worshiping any of these images that never come to our rescue. That's my position on that. Are we clear? And I don't hesitate to state that. When you hear me say everybody that's been making a claim of their gods and their special relationships, get on the phone and call them because you're going to need them. And it's about time they start proving themselves. Whoever, however, whatever it is that we have called God. Because he's been challenged by the European. And if he has any power whatsoever, this is his opportunity to prove himself or step off and leave us the hell alone. And I mean that too. Because like I tell you, I'm seeking truth. I'm not seeking images, and I'm not protecting images. You know, if you say you God, make your sandwich. I ain't got no problem with that. Make your sandwich. If you ain't make no sandwiches, don't expect me to, start contributing to your platform. Get the point? In other words, if you hire me to fix your door and I'm a carpenter, I'm not supposed to be at your house next year telling you keep hope alive while still collecting from you. And the door's still off and the children are cold. Either I'm a carpenter or I'm not. Either I can fix the door or leave you the hell alone. If these lights go out, we have this light problem, right? So my house doctor. So if it's light, we also have shadow problems. So I gotta fix that later. But if I can't fix it, leave it alone. Stop claiming something that you ain't producing. And so we're being charged by divine law to prove our gods, our multiple gods that all of us have claimed, that clearly none of them have rescued us yet. And it's uncomfortable truth, isn't it? But most people don't have the guts to say what I just said, because they're too intimidated. Well, I'm not. It's about time for the idol God worship crap to stop. And whoever's real, step on up, because, we ready. I think we've been enough generations paying out of the ears and out of the pockets and out of every damn thing for all these blessings that we never damn get. It's about time for us to get real. So, meanwhile, let's deal with some facts. That's my position. Are we clear? Meanwhile, let's try to save the babies. That's my position. Now, I want you all to pay attention to this. This is the Corporation Excise Tax Act of 1909. You hear me? Excise Tax Act of 1909. Excise law is a law imposing excise duties upon a specified or upon specified commodities, providing for the collection revenues therefrom. An excise tax is an inland impost on articles of manufacture, or sale, and also upon licenses to pursue certain trades or to deal in certain commodities. And excise is also a statute imposing duties or requiring payment of license fees for operating motor vehicles for hire on the state highways, and is an excise tax measure rather than a police measure. And for reference, you'll see comparative laws, Nevada 4437, Zemer versus Babcock and Wilson Company. DC, Nevada 22 F sub 384, 385. That's reference if you want to look it up in law and principle. And so the concept that people have, and you've been trained, is that the excise tax applies to you and your labor. It does not. It applies to corporate entities only. Are we clear? And by privilege of doing business. And as far as licensing, and this goes to you, on motor vehicles, it only applies to cabs and tractors and trailers. It doesn't apply to the common vehicles. It only applies to ones for hire. And then it must come from a duty of the post of the national sovereign delegated authority tax duty. It cannot come from a private corporate entity. So you got fraud taking place on multiple levels. Department of Motor Vehicles is not government. It's a private corporate enterprise belonging to the Queen of England. Yes. Now, misguidance and misrepresentations. All across the continent of North America, many natural people have been and are deceptively classified as artificial privileged corporations, and having been so documented by corrupted politicians, pseudo-government agency personnel, and other anti-constitutional persons, many of these operatives are working within tax-funded government and quasi-government agencies. Violations are being made against constitutionally secured rights, against inalienable rights, etc. Usurpations and other bureaucratically induced deceptions have been executed and practiced without the people's free will or knowledgeable and involved agreement. The necessary mutual component aspects recognized in the laws governing contracts have also been voided by deviance within government. A lack of vagueness is essential to an honorable contract or tax form agreement, yet vagueness plays a common role in the adhesion contract forms being an almost standard condition affecting the clean taxing contracts and agreements being issued by the IRS, i.e. U.S. demos. Now, this is Supreme Court for the United States in relationship to the Excise Tax Act of 1909. Pay close attention. This is the law. This is the principle. This is established law. The Supreme Court for the United States of America, the Republic, is vested by the Constitution with original jurisdiction. In all cases of affecting ambassadors, public ministers, and consuls, notice that? Consuls, not, you know how they say you want counsel? That's a fraud. Consul. And consuls, and those in which a state is a party, the appellate jurisdiction over all other cases within the judicial power of the United States, both as to law and fact, with such exceptions and under such regulations as Congress may make. The Supreme Court appellate powers extend to the subordinate federal courts and also in certain cases to the Supreme Courts of the several states. The Supreme Court is composed of a Chief Justice and 8 Associate Justices. The following are a sample of Supreme Court cases dealing with clarifying controversies and issues concerning quote-unquote excise taxes and excise taxation. Study them carefully. We trust they will assist the reader the natural people, and the citizens. The Corporation Excise Tax Act of 1909 was adjudicated in Flint versus Stone Tracy Company, 220 U.S. 107, 1911, 31 Circuit Court, 349, wherein the Supreme Court said, and pay attention to this carefully, you all, the tax under consideration may be described as an excise upon the particular privilege of doing business in a corporate capacity, i.e., with the advantages which arise from corporate or quasi-corporate organizations. The requirement to pay such taxes involve the exercise of privileges. So as you can see, we're not talking about rights, we're talking about privileges of corporations. Are we clear? Now, the reader is strongly and wisely advised to thoroughly research and study the etymology and the definitions of the following words and phrases. Use a good law dictionary, an unabridged dictionary, a thesaurus, and be sure to take notes. Pay attention to these words. 1, excise. 2, taxes. 3, corporation. 4, capacity. 5, requirement. 6, privilege. 7, rights. 8, constitution. 9, person. 10, personality. 11, inalienable. 12, jurisdiction. 13, pecuniary wages. 14, impropria persona. 15, fraud. 16, unconscionable. 17, artifice. 18, de facto. 19, de jure. And that's just for starters. Now, notice this again, 1913 again. No drawly set up the old Canaanite temple recognized correlatives. So the 16th Amendment, 1913 AD. The 16th Amendment, 1913 AD, was adopted under the Woodrow Wilson administration to favor the corporate constituency, being those men who founded the Internal Revenue Service Corporation, IRS. The negative law amendment reads as follows. This amendment of 1913. The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes on income from whatever source derived without apportionment among the several states and without regard to any census or enumeration. Immediately you recognize that that's unconstitutional, because the Constitution commands apportionment. So you can see already that the 16th Amendment was unconstitutional. Now, the history of the enactment and subsequent ratification of the 16th Amendment discloses beyond doubt that the intent and purpose of the 16th Amendment was to tax income derived from government-granted privileges, particularly corporate activities and the profits arising from the sale of commodities and from other capital assets. This did not expand the taxing authority. I repeat, this did not expand the taxing authority. It clarified the arguments of limitations. And for case law, you can look at Pollock versus Farmers Loan and Trust Company as an example. Now, and I'm going to go a little further. I want to get into a section. And those of you who have this book, although it was not the final edition, it was the 2 sets before the final edition, but it was printed out, so that's what's out there. So what is income? And this is page 42. What is income within the meaning of the 16th Amendment? This decision by the Supreme Court is noteworthy since the court reviewed and relied upon most of the foregoing case laws, citations, presented before arriving at its conclusion. In Goodrich versus Edwards, 225 U.S. 527, 19 and 21, the Supreme Court defines income as follows. Please pay attention to this because this is the nature of what I wanted to make clear to you tonight. The definition of income, quote unquote, approved by this court, i.e. the Supreme Court, which is the highest court, the gain derived from capital, from labor, or from both combined, provided it be understood to include profits gained through sale or conversion of capital assets. Are we clear?
Clear.
Only by conversion of capital assets. Eisner versus McCumber. The gain derived from labor contemplated in the Goodrich case supra, and in previous and subsequent cases where the phrases used means the actual gain or profit derived from contracting the services of laborers or employees. Contracting the services. However, this refers to gains acquired above and beyond the principal investment. So the income tax applies to the profits made not from the capital, but from the profits made from capital investment of corporations, not your labor. So they've been miseducating people and robbing them, haven't they? This is very simple. Why is this stuff not taught to our people? Because people around you have been sucking on you too. And they want you to continue in these problems because they got something to sell you. And they're sitting around competing with who got the best this or this best that to sell you when you really need to enforce that Constitution like Prophet Noble said. Are we clear?
Clear.
And you must learn what it means when the Supreme Court says a court of competent jurisdiction. And a court of competent jurisdiction means Article 3, and it means that it cannot be run by a bar association member. That's why the Supreme Court has stated that the state courts are incompetent. But for some reason, the people seem not to be standing up. And a few who have some conscious Moorish Americans have been criticized by people who really don't understand this stuff and make them thinking that they're making stuff up or that they're being anti-government when they're actually enforcing that Constitution, which keeps corrupt government in check, which is why you're in trouble now, because you have absolute thorough 99% corruption from the top to the bottom, and it's entrenched. This is why you have no due process. So it's incumbent upon you to reinstate Article 3 courts to protect yourself. Meanwhile, set up trusts to protect yourself. Are we clear?
Clear.
Now, in relationship to the question that you asked earlier, brother, understand that the license tag registration is related to omnibuses and things like that. That means livery vehicles where they're hiring, like a taxi cab, they must have a license. Like tractors and trailers that are delivering for corporations, they must have a license. The regular cars on the street, your personal cars, do not require a license or tag. And so anything that they do in relationship to trying to fine you or to arrest you or to take your vehicle because you don't have that tag or that license is a fraud and is a criminal act on the part of those persons who are really private human traffickers. They are not government whatsoever. So you must know the law in order to protect yourself. And what I just told you, take that and you will get that whole thing thrown out. But what you want to do and what we want to do in the future is to set up consular court by which we can start calling them to court and charging them for violating the people. And even though we won't have the Army immediately to set up, we got it for the record, and we're going to charge them, because that is in Article 3. And that is the court of competent jurisdiction for diversity of nationality. Established law, not some idea that we came up with. That's the established law that has been neglected. The request is for you to step up to your responsibility in those matters. Are we clear?
Clear.
Does that answer your question, good brother?
I mean, I kind of knew that.
Get the mic. Yeah, but you kind of knew that. Now, go ahead. Continue. Get in the mic. I can't hear
I
you.
pretty much want to know about the allodial process. I've already submitted paperwork.
All right. Now, allodial, you know, like when people talk about free and all that stuff. All right. Give the brother dictionary. Give the brother dictionary over there, and I want you to read allodial. Can you grab that dictionary up there, right behind you, the brown ones? You can use that one if it's in there, and if it's not in there, the other.
On the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. Give them both. Yeah. The brown ones. Yeah. And I want you to look up allodial. And I want you to read it. Because this is important for all of us to really be clear on this. Because one of the things that I recognize is that even you've been studying, but certain law terms and law-related words are not familiar with our people. However, they should be. This is my point. So prior to 1913, this was common language, if you get the point. So when you're talking about allodial, you're talking about free and clear. Now people keep talking about freedom, they don't even know what freedom is. Go ahead, read it, brother. Go ahead, get in my.
Pertaining to the absolute ownership of land free from rent or service.
Isn't that straightforward? Why is it that our people keep talking about freedom and don't even know what allodial means? They've been miseducated.
I'm trying to figure out how to get the title, or do I got to create my own?
No. All of us have to start nationalizing everything concerning yourself. You have to start claiming your estate. You got to know that you got one, though, if you get the point. And we must come united in our claim. It will neutralize the bonds that they have on the market. It absolutely will. You see, the monster is too big for you to fight as a single unit. Collectively, you start rebutting their claims. The bonds that they have created, which they call derivatives, will die, whoever possesses them. In other words, the people have power, they don't know how to use it. In other words, we've been minimized so greatly that we actually think we're powerless. They want you to think that you're powerless. Are we clear? Are we clear? The only reason why people don't win as single units is because of their criminal activity, because the barristers of England actually own the court systems, which aren't really courts. The people keep approaching them like they're courts because they clearly don't know the history and the law. They're not courts. They're commercial trading venues for the United States Service Corporation and Roman Curia members of foreign unregistered corporate exploiters, Europeans pretending to be Americans, and all of the things that are necessary for you to make arguments. Our people have not made the argument. They keep approaching these things like these people are government, thus giving them jurisdiction that they do not have. Are we clear? This is why we impress upon the people, learn and understand in personam jurisdiction, subject matter jurisdiction, territorial jurisdiction, all of which affects everything you do in everyday life with any persons or organizations or agency operators that claim to have any authority whatsoever in your affairs. Are we clear? Get clear on that and answer your own question. See, you're seeking something that's already yours. This is the whole point. We need to understand the distinction between privileges and unalienable rights. Take that same dictionary. I want you to look up unalienable rights. And keep in mind, when you're talking unalienable rights, you're talking birthrights. They're related. They're absolutely related. Yes. Yes. They're absolutely related. And again, this particular chapter of the from the Book of the East that we have on the board here is one of the most important scriptural chapters that can be presented to anybody on the planet during this cycle of time. It is one of the most poignant, and it is modest. However, it is one of the most important chapters for spiritual liberation for the human family that's ever been written, and which we will read to you momentarily. Inalienable. Yes. Were there any other questions that were being projected? All right. Now, inalienable rights in the nature of human interchange are rights divine, or rights in nature, or what you call divine rights, which cannot be cribbed, superseded, tread upon, exchanged, sold, or converted by people in government. Are we clear? Clear. Basically, that's it. Cannot be transferred to another. Do you have it, good brother?
It don't say anything. It just says unalienable.
Well, go ahead and read it. It's also
That's what it says. Unalienable.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead and read it.
I'm reading it. It says inalienable.
That's all it says?
That's all it says.
This is again why you have an expanded dictionaries. But basically, unalienable rights and called inalienable rights are rights divine that cannot be sold or transferred to another. This is why it's also important for people to understand what birthrights actually are. They keep hearing these terms and are not clear on them. We must make them absolutely clear. Because you must know what your rights are. And this is what they say: if you don't know your rights, you don't have them. And they take the position, if you haven't taken the time to study what your rights are, they have the right to claim it. They don't, but this is the position that they take. And they have been rudely, crudely abusing our people from day to day. And people in positions of authority on our side who have taken positions of so-called leadership in the churches, mosques, synagogues, and temples have breached their trust because they have not stepped up to the constitutional principles to protect the rights of the people. Yet they've been taking finance from them, and yet they've been ruling over them, and most of them have been compromised by the very corporate states, operatives who have been robbing the people of their unalienable rights. Are we clear? And so there it becomes necessary for the proper neutrality to set up the old Canaanite temple for the restoration of your nationality and your birthright. You must know why it was taken in the first place, in order to rob you. And the legal processes by which they execute these actions of escheat in the courts is called ex parte actions. Are we clear? Keep that in mind. Are there any other questions? You find it?
It's in my Black's Law.
All right, read your Black's Law.
Not subject to alienation.
No, say what it is.
Inalienable. Not subject to alienation, the characteristic of those things which cannot be bought or sold or transferred from one person to another, such as rivers, public highways, and certain personal rights.
Now you understand why on the public highways you don't need a license? except you're for hire. And this is why some people will make a tag and say not for hire, just that simple, and keep on rolling. Now, they already know that's your right. They don't want you to know it's your right because they're organized criminals. And they know that they got enough Negro leaders amongst you who getting kickbacks in the background, who will not touch these kind of subject matters, and will say, have you marching around talking about racism and prejudice and still really dealing with your unalienable rights, which brings remedy. Do you know how much finance leaves our communities every day by our people getting profiled, misclassified as corporate activities, and they're stealing these people's cars based on registrations running out or not having a tag, or tag running out when none of that stuff is required for them by law, and these people know it and knew it all the time and been raping our people. And people sitting in jail for days for tickets as a corpse. And none of these so-called leaders have stepped up to them. This is another reason why we want to set up the restoration of consular court, because with the consular court, they cannot do any of these ex parte actions. It stops it right in its tracks. But then a lot of leeches along the way get pulled out, don't they? And leeches can, you thought you had freckles on your arms, there's leeches. So again, when you start looking at the ramifications and the far-reaching activities concerning these matters, you can understand why the sensitivity of Article 3 courts. Islam, give her the mic, please.
Islam, this question, it says, hello Taj, I have a question. My understanding about being U.S. citizens, we cannot be U.S. citizens.
Exactly.
But I'm hearing that there is documents stating that USA could. USA, could you explain the difference? I know we can't be U.S. citizens, but I'm hearing that someone say that on the documents.
That you might see on a nationality card means unity, salvation, Allah.
Unity, salvation, Allah.
Which is also on the charter. So that's for anyone that might be confused about that. But a U.S. citizen is stock, chattel stock, considered dead. Unum sanctum.
What about an American citizen?
American citizen is like a vague truth, because it's non-specific. So if you talk about American citizen, what you're saying is, well, we're descendants of Moroccans. Well, yes, but which nation state? So you talk about Brazil, United States of Brazil, United States of San Salvador, United States of Brazil, or Belize, Canaan land, Mexico, one of the Caribs, Dominica, Haiti, you see, Borican, these are all American citizens. You see, so now when you get into consular issues, now you must be specific and name the nation, i.e., what's your nationality? You see, it's very simple. Once you understand this, you can see we're in breach in our relationship with the rest of the human family and suffering for it. Juali came to correct that. And our people, for whatever reasons, and I say it's mostly because the way this information has been misrepresented, don't appear to understand it. A lot of our abuses because we have been denationalized. We're stateless persons. And we have no protections, technically. And so the corporate operatives claim us as state boards, and a state board has no right of a state. They just do to us what they want to do to us. That's really what they've been doing. It is very simple what they've been doing. And some things some people have done in relationship to that implies it without an explanation. As an example, in the Nation of Islam, you know that Islam is not a nation. That's a contradiction. but it says Nation of Islam, and yet they don't teach nationality. Contradiction, isn't it? But yet to imply a removal from a colored jurisdiction, they put an X on the name of the person because they have no nationality, so they give them an X. While the leadership themselves take on Ali's and stuff like that. They know that these people are Ali, Gay, Al, Neil. Everyone knows that. Once you understand what things really are, you can understand frauds. I don't care who it comes from. And what we must stop doing is defending personalities when they could just simply tell the people the truth about what's going on and start solving these problems. But usually, they've been sucking off of these people, if you get the point. And we need to stop that. And how do you stop it? Teach the people the principles of truth. Make truth your religion. And when you find out another truth, you drop the lie. This is just like that. You know what I mean? Is that satisfactory, or you want to expand on it?
Was there a question about the back of the card or another entity called the USA?
You know what I think, abundance? I think because the controversy arises with a lot of people not knowing the political dynamics, not knowing that the United States is a private corporation, thinking it's a country. So that's the first issue. Then the other issue of people around them who should have been telling them the truth, deliberately failing for whatever their cause or purpose is to tell them that a U.S. citizen is chattel stock. And at the same time, the U.S. citizen paradigm has been promoted by conversos amongst us who have been designated as civil rights leader guys. And so it has some sense of credibility, though you know, because you study, and I know it's a fraud and a false platform and a false promise and a compromising of the being into a corpse or the dead. You know, so then when some people see, like when the nationality cards issued by the Moorish Science Temple of America has said, I'm a citizen of the USA, they be thinking it means U.S. citizen, it means unity, salvation, Allah. But the Prophet also said for the Moors that the half has not been told. If I told you everything, you would go back to sleep, study. Because he already knew that he was dealing with people that had limited knowledge, coming from many walks of life. But they knew by the Spirit that there was something about this man that was redemptive. You know, so they came from all walks of life. You know, and which is again why later he adopted the religious affidavit in the last year of his life to protect the movement and to protect the people's property, because the Europeans started escheating properties as these people started waking up. You know, and then that created a lot of confusion because people are not necessarily aware of the political motivation as to why he did that. He was forced by the political atmosphere to make changes. And so people think that the mission changed. It did not change. Now, and so the issue of preserving the estate or even understanding trust principle to protect the people's estate have not been taught to a lot of Moorish Americans. They hear this thing about trust, and when you talk to them, they don't know 2 nickels about what a trust is, how to formulate one, you know, the whole relationship of even the global estate trust or the global world trust that the Pope set up after conquering the Moors, which is part of their problem. And then you see people around us, you know, dancing around it and don't want to really deal with it and act like, you know, they can buy their rights with some package or something, or who got the best nationality card. If your nationality card is on a piece of toilet paper, it is as good as another if you honor your mothers and fathers. Let's get that straight out the box. You know, and then you have Moors constantly trying to denationalize each other. They're competing for some kind of economic gain. That's corruption on its face. You know, all of this kind of stuff has to end. And the way you end is just simply tell the truth. And let the chips fall where they may. Do not protect personalities. Deal with the facts. Deal with the facts. And know that people aren't going to like you. But, you know, either you love these children and these generations or you don't. you're either going to be part of the problem or you're going to help try to solve this thing, and then try to get people to stop their little petty agendas and come together and fix this thing, because we got the knowledge amongst us. You just got, this corruption of these Moors chasing this fiat. You know what I mean? And competing with something to sell rather than dealing with the issues set before that we need to address. But the USA thing, that's a corporate stock. And these people were convinced with operatives under the 14th Amendment that think it meant Negro citizenship. They don't even know what Negro means monkey. These people can't read. And it's unfortunate because people on our side in the name of scholarship keep on defending that position while at the same time talking rights, but they will never talk colonial, will they? Yeah, right. Act like they don't know what it is. So again, we've got these dynamics dealing with our own. And so the best thing that we can do is keep telling the truth, going against the grain. We know it's against the grain because the masses don't even know they were in mental slavery. They think they're spiritual. They get excited, think they're spiritual. Rev takes $5 out of their pocket, they feel lighter, think they lost weight, think that means they're spiritual. No, they just broke, that's all. They're light-footed because they broke. But it goes on and on. But cutting through the chase, that dynamics of that confusion really deals with the U.S. citizen issue, distinguished from unity, salvation, Allah, that's on a nationality card that many people don't know that that's what it means. And having not been told, they think it means it appears to be a political contradiction. It's not explained. And this is again why things must be, just the truth just needs to be told. And then people get titles and then they start thinking they have authority over people. And no big eyes, no little U's, eyes up long master. We gotta, and you do that by teaching the common people the things that the priesthood knows, so the priesthood can no longer maintain their fictional power. And then blame the injury that they themselves have afflicted upon humanity, blame it on the mystical devil. Can any one of you start reading this? This is one of the most important chapters of scripture that can be presented to humanity at this time. The Mysteries of the Silent Brotherhood of the East, chapter 8, the Council of the Seven of the World. And every once in a while I'll read this, but this needs to be read so that you can start understanding the other side of the missionary work of the Moorish Divine National Movement, is to liberate you from the priesthood. All right? And not too many people put emphasis on that part. In every age since time began, but 7 sages lived. At first of every age, these sages meet to note the course of nations, peoples, and tongues, to note how far toward justice and love the race has gone. Can you scroll that up? To formulate the code of law, religious postulates, and plans of rule best suited for the coming age. So put it over on the corner icon. Or put it on the corner icon over here. Put it on the corner icon. Now back up some. Take it up a little bit. To formulate, right now, I was on line 4. To formulate the code of law, religious postulates, and plans of rule best suited for the coming age. An age had passed, and lo, another age had come. The sages must convene. Now Alexandria was the center of the world's best thought, and here in Philo's home the sages met. From China came Menkster, from India Vidyapati came, from Persia Casper came, From Assyria, Ashpenaz came. From Greece, Apollo came. Matheno was the Egyptian sage, and Philo was the chief of Hebrew thought. The time was due. The council met and sat 7 days. And Menster rose and said, the wheel of time has turned once more. The race is on a higher plane of thought. The garments that our fathers wore have given out. The cherubim have woven a celestial cloth, have placed it in our hands, and we must make for men new garbs. The sons of men are looking up for greater light. No longer do they care for gods hewn out of wood. They seek for Allah not made with hands. They see the beams of the coming days and yet comprehend them not. The time is ripe, and we must fashion well these garments for the race. And let us make for men new garbs of justice, mercy, and love, that they may hide their nakedness when shines the light of the coming days. And Vidyapati said, our priests have all gone mad. They saw a demon in the wilds, and at them cast their lamps, and they are broken up, and not a gleam of light has any priest for men. The night is dark. The heart of India calls for light. The priesthood cannot be reformed. It is already dead. Its greatest needs are graves and funeral chants. The New Age calls for liberty, the kind that makes each man a priest, enables him to go alone and lay his offerings on the shrine of Allah. And Casper said, in Persia people walk in fear. They do the good for fear to do the wrong. The devil is the greatest power in our land, and though a myth, he dandles on his knees, both youth and age. Our land is dark, and evil prospers in the dark. Fear rides on every passing breeze and lurks in every form of life. The fear of evil is a myth, is an illusion and a snare, but it will live until some mighty power shall come to rise the ethers to the plane of light. When this shall come to pass, the Magian land will glory in the light. The soul of Persia calls for light. One of the most important scriptures that can be presented to humanity on the planet at this time, and should be shared by all, because the liberation of humanity shall be achieved when they eliminate the priesthood, who is really the demon and has never been charged, standing behind the pit and getting away with it. And that's the truth. And a demonstration of the demon of the priesthood is in the story where they deliver Yeshua to Pontius Pilate and act like the devil did it. It's the priesthood that did it. It always has been the priesthood. And people grow up, whether looking at the Septuaginta, the Bible, the Heliotext, Pentateuch, Hexateuch, all the books. Look at Prophet Muhammad when they ran him out of Mecca. We even celebrate, him making the trek to Medina. The whole issue of the miseries of the prophets has come from the priesthood. And the priesthood made up the mystical devil and blamed the devil for what the priesthood has always done. And they've been robbing the widows' pennies and robbing the people ever since, having them fight the mystical devil when the priest vampire was standing right before them all the time in a black robe. Islam. And has gone uncharged. That's why this chapter is so important, because this prepares you for what you're meeting in this Aquarian light. The Aquarian light will not allow this crap to continue. Islam.
Just this question. This person says that they have says, I realize this may be an elementary question for some. However, I have a guest that would like an explanation for the significance of using the appellations, and the necessity for having a title and its purpose as it is associated with our ancestral estate, and a question mark. Also, what is the meaning of using suffixes like el, bey, at once at the end of a nom de guerre?
Well, it's not a, nom de guerre was, usually if somebody has an il and bey, they don't usually have a nom de guerre in front of it. It's usually a free national name. And actually, that's like it's sort of like saying Elohim or mother, father. Because Il is actually the feminine principle, and Bey is usually the son who carries out the law. Say it again.
I said, people are confused because that organization that was set up to actually help liberate us and to help free us have not done anything for the liberation of our people, and they're actually set up in the public as a corporation.
And now
they're actually set up in the public as a corporation. That organization that we know, that's a religious organization. We also know there's a civic organization. They're actually teaching people those things. Keep the nom de guerre. They're telling them. Attach the title El Bey afterwards.
Let's explain what that is. The deal of it is because when the popes defeated the Moors, essentially, and particularly surrounding the fall of the Red House on January the 1st of 1492. This is the reason why the Romans will celebrate what they call a new year on January 1st. It is not the cosmological new year, but it's really the fall of the old Muslim Empire. Now, although it didn't fall, that's what you call an axis year. It didn't fall totally, but that was the pendulum move. And so this is the significance of them doing the Mummers Parade also at Philadelphia, where they conspired to take the birthright, etc. Now, the deal of it is people, and I understand it, will argue the issue of people taking on the Il and the Bey too, or which are the titles. Il, Bey, Ali, Day, and Al, etc. You know that most of the Als and Days are in the South Gate. Although there's some up here, mostly in the North was Il and Bey, and Ali exalted, limited. I think, in my own opinion, really while that is a cultural abridgment, it is not a what you call severe violation, in my opinion. Because you have right to all the titles. What I would hold is that in according with Moorish tradition and customs, is that any title that you have, that you must live up to that title. You don't take on a title that you do not live up to. And to that degree, it would be culturally corrupt. And it would indicate, I would call it arrogance, where people come into something, everybody wants to be a chief, everybody wants to be important, and they take on titles when they're really not worthy. But does not necessarily mean that the person themselves are bad people. They need to learn the culture. And understand this, in relationship to corporation, the damage with corporation is when the corporation, which is a personality reflecting yourself or your interest, is constructed by someone outside yourself and applied to you. The corporation itself is not bad. Like, say, for instance, the name of your store, that's a corporation. But it doesn't mean it's incorporated. Do you understand? You create and I think people need to get very clear about what a corporation is and how it serves. Now, in relationship to business in general, corporation is set up by which an estate or some resources in an organized, accountable manner can be transferred or made descendable or by succession to a governing body or persons, etc., specified. And the corporation takes on the nationality of its constructor. In other words, whoever constructs the corporation, it takes on their nationality. And I think that's an aspect of corporation that's very important that a lot of people don't always consider. Now, in relationship to, say, the Moorish Divine and National Movement, the Moorish Temple of Science and the Moorish, the old Canaanite Temple are unincorporated. The Moorish Science Temple of America adopted as its corporate name for the Moorish Temple of Science had to do with political moves that were made because the movement was under attack, you know, of infiltrators. And this is again why a lot of people don't want to read that letter that Prophet Obadiah wrote to be read before every meeting late in the year in 29, you know, and he was to die that year too, if you understand. And because we know as we study the corruption that was set up with the corporate activities, and particularly with the Jesuit orders and the Knights of Malta's United States Corporation Company having been falsely and repeatedly misrepresented as a country to the masses, known by politicians and known by Masons and known by Cyclos members, etc., known by so-called black leaders but not told to their so-called followers, is the great corruption in relationship to this corporate issue. And I think when we're looking at the issue of the corporation, including the 14th Amendment, which was designed to steal our estate, etc., I think that area should be really emphasized and cleared amongst our people. And due to the fact that we clearly do have extreme corruption in all of the organizations, you know, that are even those allegedly liberating us, etc. You can see even why the prophet had, you know, warned the Moors. He said, "The half has not been told. If I told you everything, you go back to sleep." And he told us to stick to principles. And as a matter of fact, when he opened up in the divine warning by the prophet for the nations, he showed you the charge and responsibility of all nations in general, and then charged us with meeting that principle, and that it is Rotarian, it is universal. You know, and this is where he states where all the other nationals have to step up to that constitutional rule of law. Why not us? What makes us think that we can continue to use these non-de-guerre, he'll say these Negro, black, and colored names that delude to slavery, then we want to complain about slavery. Knowing that it would take people with more genius minds to go into this information, who have multiple levels of seeing, that could see what he's really doing and clean it up. And this is also why he prepared them by saying, the day will come that people will come into this movement with their eyes already open and will push you old Moors to the back. What he's talking about is the conversos that have been who have been stagnating and selling out. He already knew it would take place. That was a given. But if you go into his literature, if you go behind his literature, you can see that the plea to us came from the beginning. He was seeking more pure souls. Oh yes. And we lack it. We got so many conversos amongst us, it's pitiful. However, the defeat of the converso spirit and the dark spirits among us is staying true to principle and not getting caught in personality, though they'll try to draw you. Don't let them put their spirit on you. Don't let them put their spirit on you. You know, stay focused to the cause, stay focused to principle, and share it with anyone you run into, but present it without spookism. You know, because it has nothing to do with belief system. It has to do with the world's largest estate. And so you know it's going to take more than just a weak conversation to reattach these people to their lost estate that they don't even know they have. You know, when you really understand this, poverty has no right to exist, because it doesn't exist except politically. The miseries and the sickness of our people are military operations. They don't know it. Most of them have never been paid money They don't even know what money is. They don't know the difference between jurisprudence and law. They don't know private commercial paper and fiat from credit from money. These things we have to fix, because all of these tools are used by the dark priesthood to steal the birthright and also to maintain the corruption. And we must know, and they must be made to know, that the U.S. democracy platform is the political system, that platform that was constructed for that purpose of instituting the feudal law of the Lords of London. And that while the preachers and everyone have been thinking they're praying to the Lords, they were really praying to the Lords of London, who are actually enslaving them. And all of this stuff is quite difficult to present to people who think that they're spiritual, because they've been going to the mosque for 10 years and to the synagogue and to the temple, because it totally crashes their illusion of security that they do not have, if you get the point.
And that was like the answer to the question right there. Like, if you continue to have those non-begear names.
Now, in relationship to that, let me say this to you. Let's explain what this is. You know, like when we share with people the proclamation and name correction and change, it is not maintained for your use. It's maintained for the record, because you have an estate in there. It's an ex-relation. But that is an estate, and the people need to be made aware that the nom de guerre is the name of a trust. It's not a name of you. It is, in fact, a name of a trust that was created to tag you. At the same time, the creation of that trust, which is embodied in the Sister-Q trust system, of the popes of Rome, ruled under the Roman Curia, of which all CEOs and members of the corporations are members of the Roman Curia. As this thing is being dismantled, that's why you see, and it's not in the mainstream news, where all these CEOs of these corporations are resigning by the thousands, but it is because of this work. It is because these people are starting to claim their estates. They don't know the power that they have. They must rebut Rome. They must rebuke Rome. They must recognize that the priesthood is the devil. You know, and that's part of the hardest part, where the dragging these people over this mountain is going to be before they kill them. You know, we're trying to get them over this hump before the priesthood kills them. They don't know the priesthood plotting to kill them. They think the priesthood is plotting to deliver them to Jesus. The priesthood is plotting to kill them. You know, and yet they're funding their own genocide and don't know it. And I'm not being petty about this, but this is one of the reasons why I do not argue the semantic arguments that a lot of people keep bringing up, which are sort of like they stole your car, and we're talking about whether it has gas in it or not.
What does that have to do with it?
Not that it is, not that it's, do you understand? Really, you know, and so, and I understand the treasonous nature of a lot of people around us, which is why in the last 7 years I started promoting for people to please do trust, because those who should have been teaching this have breached their trust. And they've already shown they had no intentions of doing this, or really clear. This is why you hear so much talking about duality's trust, and you never see nobody smack that on the table, and you never see anybody explain it. So therefore, in rule, civilized rule, when those in position of authority breach their trust or breach their duties and responsibilities to the people, all rights revert back to the people, because the people are the sovereign. This is why people get upset when people understand nationality and birthright and start treating the people's right of claim of sovereign divine right as some kind of anti-government unlawful activity. Like you don't have a right to it. What they're saying is you don't have a right to have your rights. But people who don't know that don't know that.
And siren, citizen.
Which is a contradiction in itself. But those kind of slander moves is to discourage people from rebutting. Because in rebutting, what occurs is, you know and I know that the Circle Church and the Chancery Knights Templars have co-opted the entire judicial system by necessity of setting up the feudal order, which is why our people can't get due process, why you can't have a jury of your own national peers, why there is no consular court to deal with diversity of nationality, and why nationality itself as an issue is suppressed and minimized. Because what it does, when presented, no ex parte action can take place, no probate of Aboriginal people's property can take place automatically. The inheritance will immediately go to the children unencumbered, which means we would build wealth. We're being robbed and don't even know we're being robbed. So again, point, I would emphasize to the people to carry out the fundamental presentment that Noble Drew Ali presented to us, and that's to help in the great missionary work of uplifting our own people, and that is enforcing our Constitution for the United States of America, because it's a covenant and it's a trust principle. It has been breached. He already knew that. But he also knew that once we went back to the state of mind of our ancient mothers and fathers, we would discover the distinction between the Constitution for the United States and the Constitution of the United States. We would learn about the 14th Amendment, which he mentioned is not necessary. He says it in a modest way. The 14th and 15th Amendment is not necessary for the salvation of our people and citizens. You already know that when you really go into it, you're going to discover all this fraud. But he presented it in a modest way so that people could accept it. You know, because that was radical, you know, to these people. And yet what he spoke in the teens and the 20s is absolutely apropos today. And he gave us keys for cure. Problem that we have traitors amongst us that have done everything they can to, to see, oh, Noble Drew Ali, when they were really there stagnating the movement. They were holding the people back, if you understand, and making sure certain information wasn't getting to them. What they were saying, Moorish Science Temple of America, so it gave them appearance of legitimacy. Those who know law and read the documents recognize these people were covered. If you spoke up, they would attack you. They think that you're against the movement when you're actually protecting the movement. And this is again where it is necessary for these refined areas of information to be dispensed by people of more intelligent character and honor. Knowing that you're going to be attacked as soon as you do it. You know, because a lot of people that came on this only came on for the finance. They front like they really care about these people. They came on for the finance. And they're trying to protect their personal, private businesses that they're pretending to be national. So, and these are the people that the European usually chooses for trolls. These are the people they usually use to undermine situations because they give the appearance of legitimacy on the surface. However, and this is back to the point, knowing that our people don't know all the history and knowing that, you know, in a couple of conversations, you really can't ground them in all this. But if you can get them to establish a trust and not file it with the IRS, keep it on the private, really private. You just notify them when there's an abridgment. If you understand what I'm saying to you. What will it do? It will kill derivatives. It will kill derivatives. And it's sort of like, how do you fight a beast that is bigger than big? Like in the book of Daniel, legs of iron, feet of clay, you know. Huh?
I said one bite at a time.
Oh. Oh,
Get out the head.
You're funny now. The deal of this, and this is how I've always looked at it, how do you when you look at the book of Daniel, look at that beast, you know, if you really pay attention to the lesson, what it's telling you is that the foundation is clay. And while you got all these brass chests and, you know, this Samsonite and stuff like that, throw a brick on his toe. The weight of the corruption will bring it down. And this is pretty much how I look at this thing, knowing that Rome has had a few hundred years to corrupt these people, and knowing that whenever anyone, any seer, or anyone that can see this, that come to try to help the people, that they would be attacked, simply expose what you know that the priesthood know to get their degrees, to give the people some way to look at things, a different way. Encourage them to question all things. You know, encourage them not to get caught into the sacred cow mentality. Encourage them not to get caught into the club mentality. To know how to associate and to belong to associations without being absorbed by the association. And that birthright and principle always stays superior and in front. And if you do that, even with our flaws of our lower self, you can stay pretty clean and pure. But know that you will have to sever relationships almost constantly. You know, this is where the narrow path comes in. So again, in due time, and this is what's taking place on the planet now, it has taken root. This is what they feared would happen, has happened. In truth, if we stop today, the root is deep enough that they couldn't pull it up. Islam.
As you just said, Granshi, what they feared or what they also predicted or prophesied, what they projected by looking astrologically or astrotheologically what happened, and what they call the great falling away was really the falling away from the scales from our eyes and us awakening. So this great awakening that we're now experiencing
all over the planet
is really what they call the falling away, and they tried to call it some bad, some negative event that was going to, some Armageddon type event, but it doesn't, you know, and even Armageddon is anything hidden.
As you have said before, it is the apostasy.
Right.
It is indeed that.
And it's the falling away and revealing of who they are.
Exactly. But in doing so, and this is back to fundamental. Honor your mothers and your fathers that your days may be longer upon the earth land which the Lord thy God has given thee. The caveat, honor not your mothers and fathers and lose your estate. That's exactly what's happened to us. Book of Isaiah, it says, I hold my hand out all the day long to a hard-hearted and rebellious people who are not called by my name. When they repent from their sinful ways, I will hear from heaven and heal their land. If they would pay attention to the book instead of the preacher, they would recognize that their state is on the earth. It's not on some cloud. And they would recognize that the priesthood worked for Rome. You know, but people get caught, they have mixed emotions and think that emotions equals spirituality. They've been played. So the battle is, how do you overcome the beasts that are so broad, so entrenched, so strong? Key, stop feeding him. Wear turtleneck sweaters, even though it's hot. You don't have to look for passion marks in the morning. Because that's the vampire straws. You know, and once you know, now understanding is, comprehend this. What is it that we do know that Rome has done? We do know that when the Red House fell, and you can go into more refined correspondences. But let's deal with landmark so that people can see pretty clearly. They set up a global estate trust to manage all conquered peoples and lands, i.e. the World Global Estate Trust that the Pope and Rome operates on now, that makes up what is called the financial system of the Western world. That's what makes it up. And predicated on the fall of the Moors, the first U.S. T-bonds were created. They just simply tagged them as African Americans. That has funded the United States Corporation Company since the Civil War. These are facts. Now, you know, as people begin to wake up, first of all, Europeans and persons who are beneficiaries of those derivative bonds do not want these people to find out who they are or their attachment to the land. So this is why so much emphasis is put on the Negro and black thing as being legitimate. And people who are allegedly respected scholars keep on trying to say we're not Moors. Because you attach you back to the land, those bonds start dying. See, because let's look at the rule of estate and trust law all over the world. These are principles. When the heir of an estate comes to a point of competence and free will, whereas they declare a right of their estate and they're not confused, and they are of free will, it is the obligation of a trustee in a loyal principle or fofer in feudal law to release that estate to the heir. So it is not in their interest for our people to nationalize politically, because that is the economic system. This is what must be understood. The U.S. T-bonds that were created after the commercial mercenary war that they call the Civil War is the foundation of the economic system that's operating on the planet today. It absolutely is. That's not fiction, that's a fact. And that fact, just as I just said it, is not known by a lot of people. They'll just make statements like this: we helped build this country and we ain't got shit. Something like that. But the real deal is the T-bonds that's backing the United States corporation debt, period, were predicated on T-bonds put on the defeated Moors, who they branded Negro, black, and colored, under the commercial mercenary war, which is called the Civil War. It wasn't a civil war, it's a commercial mercenary war, and there's never been a treaty signed. In other words, the Civil War has not ended, nor has the Inquisition operations. The politics that creates much confusion in North America today is that is the fact, and no one wants to discuss it openly. And they don't want people bringing it up, because it negates the credibility of many agencies and operations that have arisen in between dealing with the social economic problems. Are we clear? So if the people, and when the people lose faith in the institutions, that trust they have in the institutions is the foundation behind the fiat system of private commercial paper, i.e. fiat and blind faith are political operatives by necessity that are conjoined. When one dies, the other does. Are we clear? So how do you defeat the beast? You stop feeding the beast. You stop taking contracts offered by the beast, birth certificates, marriage certificates, anything offered by the corporate states. Do not take them. They're all bank bonds, and they're all human trafficking instruments that have been falsely presented as divine instruments. None of them are. They're all bottomry instruments. Islam, good.
Islam.
And then give you the mic after you finish. Go ahead.
Okay, Islam. I think what I'm seeing, or what I'm just in circling.
You're analyzing.
Analyzing with the allodial. I think the thinking of the scale is too small, where one is saying it's as if they're saying, let me just get my little small tract of land and claim that.
Yeah.
Not realizing that it's all yours.
It's exact now. There you go. So now you're recognizing what you're identifying is what is known in psychiatry as disassociation.
Right.
And our people are suffering disassociation not by accident, but yet by design, which you will also see in Executive Order 115490 when it talks about the encroachment methodologies used by the corporate state upon the people that they would adjust, and not knowing the real technicality of the operations would crack up, which is why most of our people are out to damn lunch. You know, not knowing is biological warfare via economic angle. You know, so what you're identifying is in fact the disassociation that we suffer from, which is again why it's difficult to make people understand the importance of nationality, because they're dealing with people who are psychologically broken and don't know that they're psychologically broken. But they also have pride, and so it's hard to get through to them because they think you're trying to convert them to something. And because they have no knowledge of the history and law, you know, they're looking at presentment of fact as another belief aside their beliefs, and whatever your beliefs are, you have a right to beliefs, and therefore your beliefs are right. They think that beliefs are knowledge. This is where that psychological valeness comes from. So I'm just throwing that at you, that you're identifying the fact of disassociation.
Yeah, because what I've also noticed in traveling, I travel via air a lot, and I was just noticing how it's tracked off in squares. And there's a great massive areas like throughout, like I was traveling across the country. It's very empty, a lot of empty land.
Yeah.
But however, when you get closer to the city area,
it's congested.
It's clustered.
Yes. Yes.
So it's as if it's purpose. It was a purpose intent to cluster,
so that they could do the kill.
Exactly.
Because they're planning the kill.
It actually looks like a gate, like as if it's
the reason it's done now. Look at what you know.
I took pictures. So.
Yeah, but look what you know. Distinguished from what people think. They're designed that way because these are kingship oligarchy territories. They are clustered so that they can do what? Tax them. And easier to control them and control the flow of resources, water and electricity, etc. Yeah, you got to understand this. It's a purpose. That is the purpose. Yeah. In other words, there's a political reason, and you're recognizing it. But recognize for all of us that it's not accidental. Islam. And yet they talk about overpopulation.
Right.
Yeah, which is a contradiction because you already know you can go down. Now, Jersey is one of the most condensed or heavily populated areas, and yet you can ride down South Jersey from town to town and run past fields and fields and fields and fields like you already know. But people, when they're beat in the head with certain concepts constantly, they accept that as truth and don't pay attention to their environment. Again, with that critical thinking, you're presenting, and this is what we also have to present to people, the critical thinking of paying attention to your environment. Pay attention to what is distinguished from what they're telling you, and do not fear to reject the narrative that's presented to the masses, because it's a lie. And it's an obvious lie upon any examination. Does not mean it doesn't have a concern one way or another, but it's a lie by any measurement. Islam, brother.
Islam. To add to that, it's true, pay attention to your surroundings. The infrastructure they're also building is important and lets you know the things they're trying to plan. I'm from PBD, Massachusetts.
Yes.
You know, when they have a brand new courthouse over there. You look at the courthouse in front of it, first off, it's facing east.
Yeah.
As well as the police department.
Yeah.
2 streets up, facing east as well. It's Masonic Lodge.
Yeah.
You know, and in front of the courthouse, you have the obelisk, the Roman goddess on top of a globe.
Yeah.
You understand? So, in other words, you know, who's ruling?
Mm-hmm.
You know, but my question to you with the Inquisition, would this have to start with around the time of, what's his name? Hernan Cortez? Was he before Columbus? Was he the start of the Inquisition?
These were emissaries, or what you call liaisons, setting up the Unum Sanctum operations in the Western Hemisphere for the Queen of England and essentially Queen of Spain, etc. And this is where all of your problems come with even them falsely renaming Moorish Latin as Spanish when in fact there's no such thing as Spanish. In truth, Spanish is fiction. It's Moorish Latin.
So I would be considered Spanish. So that's why,
considered but not.
Yeah. So therefore, I'm a Moor.
Of course, you be Moro.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Remember, they call us Latinos, Latin. That's a cover name. That's not a bloodline nor pedigree. You know, what you have here, like amongst the Moors in the south, they're Arawak and Taino. And that's who they are. They're Carib, Arawak, Taino, Moors. They're all Moors. And as an example, even when Colombo and his emissaries came to the Atlantis Islands, the first thing they did was slaughter the people. And of course, you know, because our culture is matriarchy. And one of the things they used to do, they used to cut the women's heads off and cut their arms off to get the gold, because the wealth would be symbolized or carried by the women, and they would have bands of gold, but they didn't like take them off like bracelets. They were actually molded onto them. And this is again why Boriquín was called rich port. And so you see a lot of brothers, Moors in the South, you know, call themselves Puerto Ricans. They ain't Puerto Ricans, which means rich port. That's the Christians going back and saying, damn, this is a rich port. And it's stuck. No different than they call us Indians. And people actually think those names are identities. Those are tags. You know, so unless the scholars start telling the real history, these fictions have taken place in society and they become a political reality, but they're scientifically false. And it's upon these false paradigms where he can build his false claims of jurisdictions, because he's made them up, so he has claim on them. No different than, you know, they get our people to be Negroes, and then they have jurisdiction once our people agree to be Negroes. Because he has right on that. He get our people to agree to be Smith, Jones, and Johnson. Then he has right on it because he got claim on it. But again, this is back to abundance again earlier. You know, the reason why, like you'll see, they say for the Moors, you don't get rid of that name. He says, but don't do no business in that name. Because you have a birthright in it. In other words, you have a claim against the Rome in that. Understand the distinction. But if you do business in that name, they have a claim on it. You know, so those refined comprehensions must be understood. And this is again why, you know, in charter, that every temple must have a school. And this is also, again, the continued violations among our own that we cannot allow to continue, and that we have to do activities that will circumvent the frauds that have been perpetrated among our own. So again, and I'm grateful, you know, that Dr. NAILAH, you know, has afforded this platform for a lot of this controversial information to flow, because most people would block this information in most institutions. They don't want it out because they can't, you know, pilfer these people's pockets and then keep them in a belief status without developing them. Because once you start getting people to respect knowledge again, which is part of Moorish culture, when these people interchange with them, they got to really come with something. They can't get across with them, keep playing this belief and, you know, keep hope alive and hallelujah to you, reverse church stuff. It ain't gonna work. you know, and they can't continue to use guilt trips to make the people be members, you know, bill payers and members. They're going to have to do substance and build with these people. And they've been getting away with just that, keeping the people dumb and keeping them club members using guilt trips. You know, so in relationship to our responsibilities to each other in these matters, it is important for us to cut through that chase. Anyway, I want to go ahead.
Also, I just want to add, just in my observation, and I made a comment, post about this maybe about 4 or 5 days ago on my Facebook page. You can see the desperation because they're pulling out the stops again. And, you know, the subliminal messages. They have a movie out called The First Purge, and in this movie, The First Purge, it basically is showing a one-night, 24-hour period when you can just carte blanche kill who you want, and guess who's being killed? Us. So I told you I do not support this movie. I will not go to see it. I will not put any energy towards it because
And it's really that's unum sanctum.
Absolutely, because there are people out here that have been programmed to be triggered for certain things.
Yes.
They've already psychologically got them in when they were in therapy at 5 years old. That at a certain point in their life they become a machine, a killing machine.
Yes.
And now they put a movie out like this called The First Purge, and if
a
Moore goes to see it, he or she is crazy.
Because they were doing it. You know,
absolutely, they've been doing it anyway, but they're stepping up their game in the name of so-called entertainment.
Yes, and it's really subliminal messages.
Absolutely.
You know? Now again, this is again what, like when you see Noble Drawley said. He said there will be a handful that will be saved, which really means that it has much to do with the honor, the integrity, and the purity of heart of the people that's going to bring them through this. If they lack that, they're more or less subject to be eliminated. You know, because the divine will come to your aid in your honor. You know, and so again, you know, I recommend also people read chapter 5 of the Holy Quran and look at the character building, etc., and the carpenter's tools. You know, they say Jesus was a carpenter, and you look at the carpenter's tools because that's a lesson within that. And we know that Yeshua's name was not Jesus. Jesus is a password. However, it comes to the people what they've been familiar with, and then you take them to what they need to know. Anyway, I want to thank you all for coming out to the House of Reawakening Minds. I'll still answer your question. And again, for the listeners, support the house, and I thank Dr. NAILAH for her dedicated work on getting this work done and making sure that this platform stays active. And Tamara, I want to thank you for your background work in so many areas, and a lot of people, you know, don't know. It's sort of like a lot of times the silent people make things happen, and you're appreciated. So know that for sure.
Islam.
Much appreciated. And the mothers, thank you all for coming out. Thank you for bringing the children. And I hope that we've done some good. If you have any questions, you know, that in the future, write them down. And, you know, and we don't duck questions, we answer questions. You know, we trust that the fundamental concepts of what your nationality is all about becomes more and more clear to you, and that the Europeans are accelerating the expurgation of these people's estates. So as these people are waking up, they're accelerating a lot of areas. And so when you see a lot of confusion even amongst our own, that means we're putting some nails in that coffin. Anyway, have a beautiful, wonderful night, and thank you all for coming.
And we'll close in prayer as we open it up.
Yes, Islam.
Can we please stand, face the east, your feet at a 45-degree angle, 5 on the left, 2 on the right. Allah, the Father of the universe, Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation by night and day through his holy prophet Drew Ali. Ameen. Islamism. Oh, as a point of announcement, just to let you know, next week we have Brother Abdullah here on our second Friday, who will be teaching, I would assume, etymology. However, what is the date for the workshop? Okay, on the 4th. So on next week we have Brother Abdullah. On the 14th, that next day, Saturday, we have Brother Kamichu Bey from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. on the 14th, doing a regular lecture, but it's going to be on Saturday. And then the following Friday, we will have Grand Sheikh back again. And that Saturday, the next day, we will have Brother Abdullah Entomology Workshop, which you need to register for. We do have an Eventbrite link on our House of Reawakening Mind site. It is 35 notes to attend the workshop in person and 25 online. So we encourage you to sign up for that before the 21st. Islam.